Very full calendar. See how late we're going to be here tonight. So it's the welcome to the Select Board meeting for April 23rd. It's warming up. Summer's going to be here soon. Election day is around the corner.
You're counting down the days.
No, not really. I've been too busy to count the days. Some announcements besides all the election activities that are happening. There's a Precinct 5 Candidates Night tomorrow. Tomorrow's also the Steps to Success Gala. What else is going on?
I have a couple of announcements.
Yeah.
Not about things necessarily. Well, the first thing is that Porch Fest, of which I have been a participant last year and again this year, is looking for porches. We have extra bands, and they need homes for that date, which is Saturday, June 8th, and the times are between 1 and 5-ish, I think. So my porch will be occupied at 1 o'clock by Two Klez for Comfort, which is John Bassett's klezmer band. It was great last year. We had a huge attendance, lots of kids dancing on the lawn, and people filling the street. It was wonderful. So it's a fantastic event, and I highly recommend it. I would urge you to go online at porchfest.org to sign up to have a porch play on your band. Band play on your porch.
We knew what you meant.
I'm not very busy, and I'm not distracted at all. So the next announcement I want to make, something I just learned this afternoon, very, very pleased. It's just very, very preliminary. But the National Council on Aging has informed our Council on Aging that we are one of 3 communities in the country that are being selected for a grant. There's a partnership between Council on Aging and Lyft, and a grant on transportation. And I don't know any of the details yet because we haven't been notified official, but we don't have the paper. We've been called, but that's all we know. But I'm really thrilled about it, and I think it's terrific that we are among the very top Council on Agings that the national parent organization is looking at to carry out one of these grants. I think it's really terrific. So,
and tackling an important issue, senior transportation.
Correct.
So, I've got 2 announcements. One, there's an event at the high school now around the renaming of the Coolidge Corner School. So if you want to break away from this riveting meeting and dash over to the high school and the Martin Luther King room, I believe, there's a forum about the renaming of the Coolidge Corner School again. And then second, I've been asked to remind the board and the viewing public about Cdbg Week. This is Community Development Block Grant Week, a grant program of which the town is a recipient. Federal dollars that come to the town to support public service programs, housing, and public realm or capital improvements. And we in Brookline make good use of those dollars. So in the public services bucket, we fund things such as Steps to Success and English classes for non-native speakers. In the housing bucket, we give dollars to affordable housing programs like the Brookline Improvement Coalition, some members of whom are with us in the room tonight. And then in the public realm bucket, we fund things like Gateway East or improvements to our housing authority properties. So again, we make good use of it, and I wish we got more Cdbg dollars, but we're thankful for the dollars that the federal government does give us.
Okay, just one.
Okay.
Brookline Open Studios is this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, April 27th and 28th from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. This is the perfect opportunity to meet some of the town's most vibrant and creative artists in their studios, homes, and group spaces. Brochures are available at Town Hall and businesses around town. Artists' details and an interactive map can also be found on the website brooklineopenstudios.com.
Okay. I'd like to announce that tomorrow, it may be too late for people to sign up, but they should know about the community roll call that the Brookline Police Department is organizing to increase community engagement and understanding of police work. It's going to be tomorrow, 6 to 8:30. There may be time to, or there may be opportunities to sign up. Still, I don't know if there are, but people can try. They're going to emphasize, in particular, crisis intervention training, which our police department, the majority of which have taken, and soon everyone will have crisis intervention training. De-escalation, that techniques that are used, and mental health intervention. That's going to be the focus. So, this is important. This is an important program because it gives the community an understanding of how the police department operates, and more importantly, how they have addressed many of the issues that plague police departments across this country. Too often people just assume that because it happened in, I don't know, Oshkosh, it also is happening here. And the reality is that we've taken steps to ensure, not guarantee, but help us ensure that many of these problems don't happen in Brookline in terms of police violence, in terms of police bad behavior, et cetera. So I think it's important for this board as well as our incoming new board member to have the opportunity to really understand some of these issues from the police department standpoint. And I've talked to Chief Lipson about doing, I don't know what it would be, but some way of introducing the board to some of the things that are going to be dealt with at the community roll call.
Yeah, I attended the first one, and it's very worthwhile. You go through some role-playing exercises. It was as valuable as Mr. Kleckner and I's visit to the fire academy, where we experienced what the fire department goes
Probably
through.
not as physically challenging.
No, it wasn't as physically challenging, but it was mentally challenging. So I would encourage everyone who can to attend.
I have quick reports on 2 meetings last night. The Climate Action Committee met. Since we will be discussing the 2 warrant articles that we held public hearings on, I won't say much more about that, but it was a robust meeting. The other meeting that was last night was the Brookline High School Expansion Advisory Committee. We talked mostly about response to the community on issues of landscaping around the Cypress playground also, and the crossing over to tap into the T and T issues. And we had a facilitating meeting a couple weeks before where we heard the issues, and our architects and the committee responded to those, and I think for the most part people were quite pleased. How we will be able to carry these out partly depends on what happens in terms of the pricing of them, but we're optimistic. The T has been very cooperative in agreeing to do things like remove fences, et cetera. So I think we've made a lot of progress on that, and that was the focus of last night's meeting.
And the last thing I'll announce, we've had good news in our lawsuits at the Baldwin School. Both requests for preliminary injunctions were denied by the judge, as frankly I expected. So full steam ahead.
Trial.
Yep.
Well, it's important, I think, to state the reasons. One of them, or the basis for them, one was a traffic issue and parking, and the judge has basically denied that to stop the, I guess you
Yeah,
want
we haven't seen the exact language
we don't
yet.
know the exact reasons, but we do know that she denied the injunction, and the other was the issue of the use of Baldwin Playground, and she saw no reason to she also denied that injunction. and basically saying that she had no evidence that we were planning to convert that, so, that playground.
Okay, let's move forward. Thank you. A couple of quick items before we get to the Kent Street. First, we have the minutes for the 9th of April.
I have one small nitpick.
Okay.
And I had some changes I sent to
Okay.
Kate earlier.
I'll move that we approve the minutes of April 9th as amended. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller.
Aye.
Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And I missed public comment. Any public comment? I see none. Next item is a transfer in the within the planning department, $10,000 from salaries to supplies.
Thank you, Allison Steinfeld, Planning Director. We have a surplus in personnel because of a number of vacancies, and we have close to a deficit in our supplies line item. Obviously, we need money, the primary purpose of which is to notify abutters of pending applications to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay, any questions, comments? I'll move that we approve the following transfer within the planning department, $10,000 from permanent full-time salaries to office supplies. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller.
Aye.
Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And we have
Thank you.
two temporary licenses. The first one is to the Pierce School PTO for a event to be held on Friday, May 10th, for their annual fall festival from 7 to 11 p.m. The second is temporary wine and malt beverage sales license to the Olive Connection, 1426 Beacon Street, to be held on Tuesday, April 30th, for a private dinner from 6 to 8. They look okay?
The paperwork appears to be in order, and the police department sees no reason to deny either of the applications.
Okay, so I'll move granting those licenses. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller.
Aye.
Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And we have an opening in the planning department, and this is due to a promotion or a
Essentially lateral.
lateral that was created by a vacancy.
Correct. Karen Martin, who is currently our regulatory planner, has applied for and has been appointed to serve as an economic development long-term planner. That leaves her regulatory position as vacant.
Okay.
I'd just like to add that I see that, we're going to the usual suspects or the usual places to look for applicants to try to make sure they're diverse. I think this is a position where we really need to go beyond the pro-diversity network and ZipRecruiter, et cetera, and maybe hone in on our target, colleges and universities that have design programs or architectural programs or whatever. Because, there may be either students, graduate students, alumni, or maybe even instructors there that would have the type of, have diversity, but also have the type of skill sets that we're looking for in our department. So, I'm just suggesting that we be a little more creative in terms of, reaching out to find a diverse workforce.
Thank you. We actually do reach out to graduate schools throughout the Boston area, probably as far south as Rhode Island.
Okay, put that on the paper next
I
time.
will next time.
Okay, so I'll move that we approve the filling of the following vacancy, regulatory planner. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller.
Aye.
Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're ready to talk about Kent Street. So who's going to introduce it for us? Mr. Viola.
Good evening, Joe Viola, Assistant Director for Community Planning. And I know this is a public hearing, and I know it's been also over a year since you've last heard from us related to this project, when we sought your approval to issue an RFI. I was hoping to take just a few minutes to give a quick recap of the process that's happened since you've last heard from us, to talk about the RFP that's before you this evening, and to briefly talk about some upcoming next steps. I just wanted to note, as the staff memo to the board, notes, after more than 2 years of work by this committee, the Kent Street Committee voted at its January 3rd meeting, January 3rd, 2019, to recommend that the Select Board authorize the issuance of an RFP to develop affordable senior housing on this site. The site itself, certainly the warrant article petitioners and the committee recognize the potential of this site for infill development of much-needed affordable housing. The site's proximity to public transit, walkability of the neighborhood, availability of commercial, retail, and services all makes this a very desirable location. And just in support of that, other planning documents the town has undertaken over the last few years, our housing production plan and our strategic asset plan / major parcel study, both identify the Kent Street site as a alternative a place where an alternative non-municipal use such as housing could occur. Again, the site itself, great location to public transit, close to bus routes, walkable. It's currently a municipal lot, as you know, which discussion amongst the committee sort of begs the question of whether or not that's the highest and best use of this site. It's a 14,000 square foot lot, about a third of an acre, which is certainly a footprint on which development could happen. And it's zoned G20, which is it's a permissible zoning district, but it's not at a level that would allow for the reuse of the site, especially if we were hoping to create parking and do affordable housing. That's a lot of letters and words up there. I'll briefly run through the process that's occurred over the past 2+ years. Following Brookline Town Meeting's adoption of the resolution for the town-owned lot, the committee, first thing I remember is attending a site walk, and then we've had upwards of 12 or 13 meetings over the past couple of years to discuss the reuse of the site as affordable housing. We worked with the Massachusetts Housing Partnership, the committee. We sought authorization for the board to engage Mass Housing Partnership to help us walk through the feasibility analysis. And the committee used MHP's work to undertake what was a year ago we were here for a request for information process. So we got some good feedback from Mass Housing Partnership. We engaged the development community about various development scenarios and whether or not there was a feasible reuse of the site as affordable senior housing. We received a number of responses from capable developers, which was great. And the committee actually used those RFI responses as well as MHP's work to come up with a draft of an RFP that's before you this evening. The committee, as part of its charge, was given the task of seeking public input on the development program as envisioned in the RFP. On October 29th, 2018, Select Board Member Hamilton and committee members hosted a public information meeting, which was very well attended. The focus of the meeting was to update the public about town and committee process, highlighting how the whole process started from town meeting, the committee's work with MHP, and we got into some detail about notable feedback from developers as part of the RFI process. Part of that meeting was also devoted to propose next steps, including reporting back to the Select Board, which is part of the reason for this agenda item this evening. Following that presentation, there was an opportunity for public comment, and more than 20 residents, merchants, and interested parties certainly gave us a lot to think about as part of the development of the program for reuse of the site. I'll note some of the meeting takeaways on the slide. It was apparent that there is certainly public support for affordable senior housing on the Kent Street site. We also heard a number of community concerns that center on traffic volume and limited parking supply. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the Route 9 corridor. Some of the fears were that another development would, I guess, be the straw that broke the camel's back. There was discussion about potential loss of parking and what would happen if the existing municipal parking wasn't replicated as part of the the reuse program for the municipal lot. There was certainly feedback from not only direct abutters, but just residents of the neighborhood wondering about construction impacts and again, with all the development happening in the Route 9 corridor, how is one more development going to affect what's going on in the neighborhood currently? And obviously, there were some concerns from direct abutters. It's a tough infill site. It's a tough urban site. It'll take a developer with specific experience to tackle the reuse of that site. And that's something we heard from neighbors and abutters as part of our RFP process. We should be looking for developers with that specialized experience. And again, finally, neighborhood character. It's the term air and light was thrown out as part of the public meeting. Even though it's not really open space, it does provide air and light. And there were concerns from abutters about not being overwhelmed. Whatever happened there, they were hopeful that whatever was built would not overwhelm the site and it would be contextual. So all that to say that we did our best to write this RFP to provide direction to prospective respondents related to community comment and preferences. A lot of those comments, emanating from the number of public meetings we had, including the October 29th meeting. So just to talk briefly about the overarching goals of the RFP. We wanted to meet the spirit of what the town meeting vote was, which was to redevelop the site as affordable rental senior housing while also retaining the number of and use of the existing parking spots. And certainly the developer evaluation process for the select board consideration was we're hoping to identify a developer through this process whose proposal can demonstrate that they, again, getting back to a tough site, that they have the experience and capacity to carry out the redevelopment of that site, and that their proposal, they really read what is in that RFP. Hopefully they're gleaning the information available in the RFP to respond to the requirements and priorities that the committee included as part of the draft RFP, and again, which were informed by public comment. Getting back to the staff memorandum, we tried to flag some things for the board's consideration this evening. Certainly, the issuance of the RFP signals to developers in the community that the select board is prepared to dispose of the Kent Street lot. The RFP, while we're looking for a capable, responsible developer who can come up with a contextual development, the committee had the dual goal of also trying to create an RFP that would allow some flexibility to allow for creative responses. Some of that flexibility lies in the disposition of town land, whether or not the town would consider a sale or a ground lease, financial return to the town. The evaluation criteria allows for developers to propose a program that could propose terms in addition to town-controlled subsidy. And finally, we're trying to allow for either a rezoning or for use of something such as a comprehensive permit to give a developer a program under which they could develop a project. Just to touch briefly on next steps. I think if you've read the RFP, you notice that there were some items that looked like they needed more detail. These are the items that needed more detail. Specifically, there's a part of the RFP that says we've completed a title search. We have that available. Where planning staff worked with our procurement folks to do a procurement for a phase 1 ESA and some soil testing. That procurement is complete. And, in theory, we could be back before the board in short order with the contract to actually pursue that work. We have a scope 4 site survey that we believe that we could issue and bring aboard a PLS or an RLS in short order to do the survey work that needs to happen. All this work would be done some that hasn't been done, such as the environmental and survey, would be needed for inclusion in the RFP. We want to get the best response possible by including the most information that we can provide. And other things such as the title search we've already completed. Obviously, as the RFP takes its final form, we're here to hear your comments. What did we miss? What should we consider? That's obviously the major reason for the meeting this evening. And the last note is just to let everybody know that really the procurement process is only the beginning of this process. There's a lot of work that needs to happen. So even if we go out to RFP and we come up with, there's a favorable bid received from a capable developer, we're just trying to let everybody know that there's a significant amount of, we'd be back before the board for designation. Obviously, we need to appear before the board at some point with a developer in tow to talk with the Housing Advisory Board about town-controlled resources. And then there's always, the challenging town meeting process where we'd have to do zoning and disposition. To say nothing about regulatory review. So, all that being said, if we leave here and we issue an RFP, there's a lot of review and work to come. So that's just a brief overview of where we've come in the past year. I know the RFP, I'm sure there are lots of comments and questions. We did our best to work with the committee to get public input and to also work internally with our Chief Procurement Officer to be sure that we were meeting the spirit of Mass General Law, Chapter 30B.
So I'm thinking, just, thinking ahead, we issue an RFP, let's say it goes out in May. Proposals come back June, July, maybe August, some process. And then the real work begins. There's really, we're not looking at the November town meeting. There's, unless a lot of stuff happens this summer. So the earliest town meeting that anything could happen is a year from now. In all, just being realistic and practical. So just, I just want everyone's expectations to be set. And then it may even take longer than that. I look at Waldo Durgan, how many, we've been at it for 2 years, to go through the town meeting process is a rather involved process, getting constituencies on board. So this is a long-term project.
Right. And I've heard, the best way to determine whether or not you have a solid program is to release the RFP to the development community and see what kind of feedback you get and go from there. So I think we're nearing that. There are obviously some steps that need to be taken prior to issuing the RFP, but there's no better test than letting developers respond and to see if there's a program that the town could support.
There was also a lot of public participation in almost every single one of our meetings by the committee. We had at least 2 or 3 members of the public that provided some really good feedback. And especially after we had our community meeting, we really did try to look at the RFP one more time and see what were we missing that we had heard from the community and tried to work those things in. So I think it's a fairly good document with lots of eyes and lots of participation.
Well, we'll wait to hear from the public
Yes.
before we pronounce it a good document.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
So I'm very in favor of a senior housing development at this site, and I always have been. I'm disturbed, however, by the notion that we would sell our rights. And I would urge this, as the process goes forward, that we only look at ground lease options. I think it's foolish. We've sold property in the past, and I was a part of that, and I've regretted it ever since. And I think that we see, as we go through the ninth school process, that it's very difficult, and that the town should not be in the business of selling these valuable pieces of property that we have. We don't know what is going to happen in 50 or 100 years, and we don't know that we'll need any senior housing then. We might want to convert it to some other kind of housing or office buildings or whatever. But I just think that we shouldn't be in the business of selling our land. I have no problem entering into ground lease for this. I understand that the World Trade Center is actually a ground lease. And if they can do it and make a lot of money and satisfy themselves, then we can do it too. And so my only caveat, and we did get an email from Mariah Nobrega, who was attended the committee meetings. I think she was on the committee, is that correct? And she expresses that idea, and I agree with her. So that would be my only caveat.
So that caught my attention as well. I'm having difficulty reconciling the potential sale with something else I read in the staff memo and absorbed over the past year about that some of the RFIs identified that it would be difficult, assuming a lower moderate income population, to absorb a tremendous amount of land acquisition costs. So if we were to dispose of this property through a sale, that statement seems to be in a little bit of conflict with it. And I'm wondering if somebody can help me reconcile those two seemingly opposing prospects of sale and having to pay some money to the town to acquire the land.
Right. Well, the way the RFP was written was trying to be responsive to RFI responses that said, well, we could do this development program under a ground lease, and like you said, it may be more, it might be easier for a developer to do it under a sale of the land, but I take your point. I think it's pretty clear through MHP's analysis and through reading these RFIs that to expect a developer to construct, replace parking, and also to provide a significant amount of affordable housing, it's a very difficult thing for them to do, and I'm not convinced that the return to the town would be significant if it was for an acquisition cost. Of all things, and there are committee members here, and hopefully they'll they can back me up on this, but we wanted a developer to do a responsible program, but I think we realized that stifling creativity and closing down options for developer was something we were not trying to do, but I think there was also a lot of agreement with you that perhaps sale is not the right way to move forward. But it's certainly something that can be edited in the RFP. Even if it were to be a ground lease, I assume it would be a very heavily discounted ground lease in order for them to be able to accommodate.
And it would have to be a long ground lease.
That's obvious.
Just by nature of the public subsidies, it would need to be a very long-term ground lease.
Yeah, so you're talking 50 to 100 years, that's a sale practically. The other thing, I think we don't want to cut off our options because, there may be some way in which we could do a land swap and, get some benefit in another area of town that could be very useful to us. And that's just one type of creative way of doing this that we don't want to preclude. So I would not want to put any restrictions against sale into the RFP.
Let me go to the public. How many folks would like to speak? Oh, excuse me. Okay, I see about 5 or 6. If you keep I would just ask, we're starting to run late, so I'd just ask that, try to keep the remarks to like 3 or 4 minutes. So just come on up and do your thing. Mr. Winkler.
Henry Winkleman.
Sorry.
Original petitioner.
Don't feel bad, he gets our names mixed up all the time.
No
Don't take
worries.
it personally.
You know what? All good things come in time. I believe this is one of those, but time is an issue. It happened again today. 10,600 baby boomers turned 65. 40% of them don't have the money, the stool of retirement, which is your personal savings, your Social Security, and your pension. Too many people don't have that, and we need to look out for the people, not only in Brookline, but all over the state, all over the country. We're looking for a place to age in their community. I think you all have heard me speak before. You know how convicted into this I am, and I really want to watch this help solve a problem that's a national crisis. I think this is a good step in the right direction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Frank
Mr.
Carroll.
Caro. Even get your name right.
Right, and, I approach this as a co-chair of the Age-Friendly City Initiative, and I want to kind of remind you that it was in 2012 that that Brookline joined the Age-Friendly City Initiative, and one of the first things that we did was we sponsored a forum on senior housing needs. Fran Price and the Department of Planning and Community Development took the lead in putting together a forum that was held in April of 2013. And it was several months later that Henry Winkleman introduced himself to me and came forward with the idea of making use of air rights over town-owned parking lots. And, Henry and I have estimated that the town could easily make use of 2,000 new units for affordable senior housing. And, here it's 6 years later, and we're now kind of on the brink of taking a modest step forward in development, which might yield us somewhere between 40 and 60 units. I'm delighted that we've gotten this far. I would urge us to move forward expeditiously. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nepal.
Hi, I'm Tom Nepal from the BIC board, and several of my fellow board members are here as well. We obviously, number one, strongly support do it fast. We are the town's community development corporation, agree with what both Frank and Henry have said. We need the affordable housing last year. Sooner is better. A related factor as you consider timing, this will only be done with low-income housing tax credits. The applications for those go in once a year. November. Neil, I know you talk about how long Brookline takes. Please get it done this year so we can get the application, whoever you select, in this year. Sooner is better. Otherwise, it's another year. This is, their schedule's outside Brookline's control. The third factor that may be beneficial that helps you move it ahead, the environmental soil testing and site survey work should be done by the selected developer so that any liabilities associated with the professionals completing that work adhere to the developer and the work they are doing there. There's no need for the town to pay for that when the developer's going to do it anyhow. You don't need to wait. Put it out, say, you guys figure it out, you guys do it. There's a lot of good stuff in the report. Joe gave lots of the requirements for that. We're incredibly supportive. It's a great place. We need the housing. I'm standing here and praying. Fast, thank you.
Fast is hard in Brookline.
Hi, my name is Liz Linder. I'm in a butter and a neighboring business, and I want to speak to, I'm not sure I should do that because that would create conflict. So I agree also, senior housing that's affordable is important and wonderful, and we should certainly have plenty of that in Brookline. I'm going to be a senior soon myself, I want to talk about the parking and the congestion in the neighborhood, which I consider to be a jewel of Brookline. It's an entry point to Brookline. It's, I've also been struggling with, well, something could go there, so maybe it should be this. But can we get a project with this kind of budget that is dealing with affordability to actually make something fit well into the neighborhood? Maybe we can. How do we address the parking and the congestion? It's really tough. I have, it's not affecting my business personally because I leave Brookline for a lot of my shoots, but I know when I talk to business owners, they are feeling choked, and maybe some of this is from the construction, but just like ramming this in quickly seems to be something that should be done thoughtfully in order to protect some of the existing infrastructure in Brookline Village. And I'm also very concerned about just protections for the neighboring buildings and the neighborhood. And that's it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good evening, my name is Brian Coonley. I just wanted to speak in favor of the project because I think housing is essential in this town. As a young person who's 30 plus years away from probably being able to live in this housing, it's still essential that we think about this. It allows for other housing to possibly open up in town for people who maybe might move into this housing, for people like me and my family to be able to stay here and not have to move out of Brookline. I want to raise kids in this town. So that's really important. I know we've heard concerns about traffic and about parking. I want us to think, we talk about 50 or 100 years from now, people of my generation and generations behind me, people who aren't even born yet, are less likely to probably be using cars. My generation already uses less cars and less traffic, so I don't think that should be something that really truly holds us up. We know from research, recently coming out of London, people who walk spend more at businesses. So any kind of concerns of impact of less parking for businesses, it will slowly over time increase the people who walk and are in this community. I really appreciate the town considering and being innovative at looking at ways to increase affordable housing. So I really encourage the select board to move on this, and that we, as others have said, do this quickly in a fashion that allows us to make sure that we get the best project for the town. So thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. I'll say. Whoop.
I'm Betsy DeWitt, and I was a member of I guess still a member of the Kent Street Committee. There are a couple of things I would like to say, and it's sort of about precedent. And I have two town projects that I think are important examples. This RFP should include a construction management plan requirement. We had one for the Coolidge Corner School, and if you talk to the abutters there, they will tell you that it was not their favorite thing that happened in their lives, but it was under control and it did not totally disrupt things. Whereas I have seen the horrific impact at on Station Street from those Brookline Place projects that have been constructed with no construction management plan. And it really is an awful thing that we should never, ever have permitted. And the town had some control there, which it did not exercise. So shame on us, because I was part of it. The other thing I want to offer as an example is the town-owned property on Fisher Hill, which not only was developed in a collaborative process, it's mixed income housing, and it was town-owned property. And to my knowledge, the neighbors up there think it was very successful, so successful that they've actually been willing to consider helping the town or supporting the town in its effort to purchase Newbury College, because they established a level of trust in a process. So I would look again at this RFP and pay less attention to its technical component and more attention to how do we do our best to protect the neighborhood. I know some of the information in it talks about the respect for the neighborhood, but that is not the same thing as a construction management plan, which says do not under any circumstances bring your nasty things in here and destroy our local businesses. So I urge you to at least think about that among the other things that are being considered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Blood.
Yes, I'm Roger Blood. I'm not wearing a hat, but I actually am here with more than one hat. I think, oh, well, I won't use the screen. I've had three perspectives on this project, all positive. We've talked about the timeline having formally begun in 2016, but the entire process, we're really 4 years into it. There has been the committee you appointed that I've been very happy to serve on with Chairman Hamilton and others. And prior to that, there were a couple of years of informal working up to get the proposal to town meeting, which included Frank Caro, former Selectman Goldstein, former Selectman Daley, and Henry Wiggleman and others. So we're on a long time frame here, and while I know there's nothing that will actually rush, we would like to move as fast as we can. One interim point in the timeline, I'm going to express some hope that you might be able to see fit to reach in the near term. Town meeting hasn't heard about this project since 2.5 years ago, but the Housing Advisory Board, which I serve on and which has been monitoring this and is very supportive of it throughout. We have an obligation to give an annual report on an annual report on affordable housing to the annual town meeting in May. And I think among the other things that we've been making progress on, it would be really terrific if we could report to town meeting that the Select Board has approved the RFP that we're discussing tonight. It's so close, and hopefully that will be something that you might be able to do in a meeting before the end of May. And along those lines also to urge that the process move as much as possible. There's another step, I think, that I would ask that, unless there's a reason that it cannot be done, that the next time you have this on your agenda, hopefully to approve the RFP, that you might at that very same time be ready with the help from staff to appoint the successor committee. I think there's a transition that takes place between the current committee that's brought you to this point and a different committee which might have several of the same members to actually vet the RFP. So hopefully those couple of things can be done in the relatively near term. The one or two other things I'd just like to mention real quickly. The HAB is supportive of this, and by all accounts, while this is too early for the HAB to put on its hat in terms of the trustee of the trust fund to commit or project any particular funding for this project, it has all of the ingredients that an affordable housing development should have, that it would be deserving of significant support from the HAB in terms of the trust funding. And in that regard, I just wanted to say something that I said that we had brought up at the large public meeting that Selectman Hamilton ran here, that there was a lot of input. And my observation at that time, and I think this will be consistent, is that the HAB and in particular its use of the trust fund to make a project like Kent Station Street work, it's also to make it better. It's not just to run up the count of cramming as many units and as many affordable units as possible on this particular small site. In fact, it could be, and very well likely be, quite the opposite. And I would reference the St. Aidan's development, which had an original proposal which was more than double the size that the project eventually came out. I think the HAB wants to be much a part of the community effort, that when the project is done, that everybody's proud of it, and the neighborhood says it was a good idea. We're glad we allowed it to go along. So I think the HAB and the trust fund will be looking at that in a very high priority, rather than just trying to ramp up density and unit count. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. We think, just last thing on traffic, other than doing nothing, probably senior housing on any site in town, including Kent Station Street, will be the lowest impact in terms of traffic generation, and this type of project will have very low parking ratio. It probably will approach zero as well. So Thank you very much for
Thank you.
supporting us so far.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll state I'm supportive, and the only thing we have to lose is to see what responses we get. So I think we should go ahead with the RFP. There seems to be pretty well put together. I think I would suggest that Mr. Viola consider what we heard from Ms. DeWitt, and then we can think about how the putting together a group to evaluate the RFP, the timing of that. I'd like to try, if it's possible, I don't know if it is possible, to get this going at next week's meeting, do an approval. Is that doable, or is that too quick? Because there's going to be a change of board.
I guess the only comment I have is we can certainly work on the draft. I don't know how we would leave the due diligence items and expectations about next steps with, there are some missing gaps in the RFP about, the town's role in getting the information to developers. But we could certainly revise the draft and take all the comments we heard tonight and turn something around.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to send it out before it's time, and I also take the comment we heard that we should move fast, but we should also move carefully and prudently. And if it doesn't happen by next week, it doesn't happen by next week. But that would put it off, for all reality, to the middle to end of May if it doesn't happen next week. Just given town meeting and elections and all that good stuff, and then you have to bring a new board member up to speed. So, any other comment from the board?
I think it's a great program, or a great project, and hope it can be a template for other projects around town. Not emphasizing is here senior housing, but middle income housing, which is a huge problem in this town.
I just want to say, it's been an absolute pleasure to work on this committee. The committee was staffed very well. I really enjoy getting to know not only the committee members, but those people who are so committed to coming to every single meeting, just from the public, the abutters and some of the business owners. I think it contributed to the best possible outcome, which is what you see before you. It was really difficult to weigh and value different priorities, keeping the parking that is there, and trying to leave creativity. I personally share Select Board Member Heller's concern about giving away an asset. I prefer the long-term lease, and I think it addresses Select Board Member Franco's concern that, the financing is going to be very tricky on this project because we're mandating that they keep the parking. And so to give a ground lease, hopefully we can work out something that makes the project feasible so that all they have to worry about are the housing credits. But I also don't want to assume that I know all the information, so if somebody can give us something that is creative and makes sense financially for us, I'll try to keep an open mind.
Okay. So thank you all I'd like to thank everyone who came for this item, and we'll move forward as fast as we can. And just even if we get proposals back and we agree on a developer and start working with the developer, you still have the town meeting process, which is a process in and of itself.
2/3 vote, right?
Right, 2/3 vote, right. So it will require the collaboration that Ms. DeWitt warned us about. Okay, thank you. moving on to warrant articles. So first up is Article 2. This one will be easy. How
Yes.
about that?
Good evening, Melissa Goff, Deputy Town Administrator. Article 2 was put in as a placeholder because we didn't know the outcome of the April town meeting where we had the last collective bargaining agreement that was outstanding. The police union approved at that town meeting. Now that we know that that item has been approved, there's no need for Article 2, so the recommendation is for no action.
Okay, any discussion? I'll move no action recommendation on Article 2. See, Mariah, the select board's a lot quicker than. All those in favor of no action on Article 2, please
Say aye.
say aye. I guess that's what you say. Select Person Franco.
Aye.
Select Person Heller. Select Person Green. Aye. Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Article 5, a school bus revolving fund.
Yes, so Article 5 is an administrative warrant article. Last year, when the Select Board and the School Committee presented the concept of fee-based busing, we didn't have a mechanism in place to put the funds into a revolving fund. So we treated it as a local receipt in fiscal 19, and in fiscal 20, we're going to be converting it to a revolving fund. Municipal modernization requires that the mechanism to do that would be a bylaw. So we actually have to create a bylaw to establish the school bus revolving fund. So that's what Article 5 attempts to do.
Did advisory take this one up?
I believe they did. The subcommittee approved it, and I think the full committee did as well.
Any controversy there? No. Seems pretty straightforward to me. This is a public hearing. Any members of the public wish to speak on this item? I see none.
I think it's just important to note that my impression is this is only for students in South Brookline now seeking transport to the high school. That's the only busing that we're doing, fee-based busing now.
Currently,
Currently.
the caps that get set by town meeting, the caps are actually in the budget vote. So you'll see a reference to the fund when we go through the budget vote next week.
Okay. I'll move a favorable action recommendation on Article 5. All those in favor, please say aye. Select Person Franco.
Aye.
Select Person Heller.
Aye.
Select Person Green. Aye. Select Person Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Okay, now on to one of our main events, which is the Waldo Durgan warrant articles, which is Articles 13, 14, and 15. Okay. Okay, because, will yours be quick?
I hope so.
Okay,
Fairly not controversial.
okay. So we'll do, yours is 29. And there was some tweaks from downstairs, or someone is proposing.
Yeah, so we had the subcommittee meeting 2 weeks ago and the full meeting last week, and there were some suggestions on changes to make. And so in the meantime, I did make those changes, and Sandy, the ones you received earlier today, Sandy's reviewed and accepted. But they haven't gone back to the subcommittee. That's this Thursday, and then next week is full advisory.
Okay, so why don't you tell us what you're trying to accomplish?
Sure. So earlier this fall, there was a survey that the Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations sent out, which I presume you're familiar with, the survey, and the results came back. It was about the diversity and composition of boards, committees, and commissions. And I received it probably along with many of you in late fall. And the discrepancy in the conclusions of the report really struck me about I think it was the stark, I don't know the exact words, it's in the Warrant article, but the stark disconnect between the people who are present on boards, committees, and commissions versus the overall population of Brookline. And so I thought about what might be some ways to seek to do a better job on this front. And so what I really thought was that town meeting themselves were sort of a very front line for local community outreach. And so we should be really looking, as we are thinking about people who are leaving town meeting, how we can better increase the outreach and participation so that the population and the participation in town meeting itself is more broadly representative of the different groups in town. And so some of the feedback from advisory was about thinking about some of the mechanisms like the survey to continue to urge the Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations to continue to have the survey, to think about ways to frame the language so that it doesn't sound like town meeting is, like the fix is in and town meeting is choosing its own successors, which I think is important to not give that impression. That's not what happens, but it's important to not give that impression. And some other language, for example, talking about how the moderator could also be considering these things in the appointment of the committees that he selects. And of course, you all who also appoint committees could be thinking about these things as well. And that was brought up as well, but I thought that that was too far out of the scope of the article to even suggest it. But it doesn't mean that you couldn't think about it too, if you're not already.
We are.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So the phrase town meeting viewed as choosing its own successors, the only problem with that, I mean, that's a good way to fill openings in town meeting, but the only problem is that people's friendship circles are so narrow. So the problem is not really, the process, it's the people.
Well, that's
So,
exactly.
and
Go ahead.
I think, there should be, you should emphasize, and I don't know exactly how you do that, how people actually get onto town meeting and encourage people to just look into their social circles and broaden those social circles maybe, so that the process of choosing successors is a little more realistic. I mean, how did I get into politics here in Brookline? Emily
Good
Novick.
question. How did you?
Yeah, how did I get in this mess?
Who's to blame?
Emily, the late, great Emily Novick, would run into me on the bus coming home, and one day said, "Why don't you join town meeting? There's an opening." I mean, that's the type of I mean, that's how things get done, and it seems to me this warrant article is sort of looking for something that's a little more, I don't know, it's not really looking at that process and how we sort of make that process work in a better way. So that's my
Can I
two
can I
cents.
respond to that?
Sure, by all
Okay.
means,
So no,
please do.
just exactly to that point in the explanation of the warrant article, originally I pointed to some research which shows that, for example, I don't have the numbers right in front of me now, but like 3/4 of white people's networks is exclusively other white people, and white networks are on average 91% white. And so it's exactly to your point of going outside of your typical network to see where, and we can use white as a proxy for many other different categories of people that we would like to engage, or race, but the point being that we really need to look beyond our networks and see how we can seek people who aren't at the table and don't look exactly like us.
So you mentioned that, this warrant article would encourage the moderator to make sure that he or she in the future might appoint, make sure that a committee has some balance and some diversity. But I don't see that here. I don't see it in the resolve clause. I think.
Sure it is.
It's in the second.
Second to last resolve clause.
Therefore, resolved.
Town meeting urges the moderator to consider inclusivity among Brookline protected classes an important aspect of deciding membership.
It's like order of speakers. Maybe I have the wrong version.
I think you have a previous version. This
Okay.
was, that was one of the suggestions from advisory committee that I incorporated
Okay,
into
good.
a,
I'm
yeah.
happy to clear that up.
Yes,
Thank you,
yes.
because that bothered me. Okay, thank you.
Well, and going off of Select Board Members Green's comment, the first, therefore, be it resolved, town meeting members should encourage and support residents that are, representative of all different protected classes. So often we get recruited through a conversation. I remember how I became aware that, one, Brookline was a town and not a city, and two, that we had this thing called town meeting, and he said, I think you should run. So it usually starts with a conversation through a town meeting member when they, meet someone that isn't quite plugged
Right,
in.
and that's how I got in. Met at a little child's birthday party.
Can I add one
Yeah.
other thing? So the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, the second recital on the second page, you should think about this, capturing a proportional representation of Brookline protected classes. So the select board is 20% black.
Where are you looking, just so I'm
You're-
clear?
you're in the previous version.
You're in the previous
Yeah,
version.
you're in the previous version.
At our table this afternoon.
Oh,
Looks like
okay.
this. I missed
I
it
thought this,
also,
I thought this was updated.
I emailed it in the middle of the afternoon, so I apologize, but life is crazy.
Okay.
That's been, the proportionality has been removed
Okay,
in general,
great.
yeah.
Well, I think the most important outcome of this is to raise the visibility of the issue and have us talk about it. And that's half the battle. So I thank you.
Thanks,
I agree.
great, thank you.
So this is a public hearing. Is there any members of the public who wish to speak on this warrant article? I see none. What I'm going to suggest we do, or unless we're comfortable voting, is let's see what the final language coming out of advisory is, and then vote it then.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, now on to the main event. Karen. So this is Waldo Durgan.
Good evening. My name is Kara Bruton. I'm the Economic Development Director for the town of Brookline. Neil, am I understanding that we're talking about warrant articles 13, 14, and 15 at the same
We
time?
sure are.
Thank
It's
you.
going to be one debate at town meeting, so it will be one discussion here.
So just to be clear, Neil Wyshynski is actually the lead petitioner on behalf, as chair of the Coolidge Corner Study Committee of warrant article 13, which is the zoning article. And the select board is a lead petitioner of articles 14 and 15, which helps implement the memorandum of agreement and the tax certainty warrant articles that are supportive if the zoning passes town meeting. So I am presenting on behalf of Neil, on behalf of the committee.
Well,
And
and I'm
other
very
residents.
grateful that you speak in my stead.
So we're going, I'm going to try to go through this fairly quickly, and we can come back to any detail that you would like. Those that served on the committee, if you could just raise your hands really quick, since you're up in the front row. Thank you for coming. So our committee included 15 residents. They have been meeting since January 9th, 2017. The committee originally included studying two sites, the Holiday Inn and the Waldo Durgan site. So we're going to talk about, I'm going to show you a slide about the committee. I want to give you some baseline information about the Waldo Durgan site itself. I want to briefly touch on the 40B proposal that's being proposed for the same site and is currently actively being permitted. I want to make sure this is very clear. There is a 40B proposal that is in the queue. The public hearing has been opened with the Board of Appeals. That is on hold until spring town meeting happens and we see whether zoning and other articles pass to support the mixed-use proposal, which will be the focus of our time tonight. We're going to briefly talk about some of the advantages of the mixed-use zoning compared to the 40B, affordable housing towards the end, and then kind of wrapping up with the whole town meeting package. I'm not going to read the slide, but this was the committee charge. This was actually part of the committee charge. It was deep analysis across a whole slew of items to look at completely different massing schemes, legal, transportation, historic preservation, picking up on some previous work that was done. We also hired Pam McKinney, who's a real estate and valuation firm, and she's done work with the town previously. She was able to test some different potential uses in massing for us, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So the site itself is located on the corner of Pleasant and John Street. It's in the heart of Coolidge Corner. It's 1.3 acres, and you don't realize how big it is until you walk back to the end of Waldo Street, and towards your left you'll see a one-story red brick building, and on your right what's known as the Durgon Garage, which is on the corner of Pleasant and John. The 3 parcels are all owned by Chestnut Hill Realty entities. In addition to the 2 garages, there's a surface parking lot, and the property is located in 2 zoning districts. I'm just recalling that when Mel Kleckner first started, he was part of a previous iteration of this group with previous select board members walking on top of the roof of the Durgon Garage many, many years ago. Here's the 2 garages, the Durgon Garage and the Waldo Garage. The Durgon Garage was originally built as an auto garage, and it's still being mostly used for auto service today. And of the storefronts, there are 2 that are operating. Here's the site boundary. This is an aerial view. This is an important slide just technically to point out, because one of the first things that the proposed zoning warrant article does, Article 13, is deal with the underlying zoning. So that blue line here, the 3 parcels that are part of the Waldo Durgan are the Durgon Garage, John Street parking lot, and the Waldo Garage parcel, which includes this tab of area back here. The blue line, on the other hand, is the zoning district. So we have 1 parcel that's in the general business district, another parcel that's in the multifamily district, and a 3rd parcel that's mostly the general business district, but also multifamily. So one of the first things the zoning warrant article does is shift that blue boundary so that all 3 parcels are fully within the general business 1.75 Coolidge Corner district. The second thing you'll see that the zoning does is provide an overlay for all 3 parcels to be part of the newly formed Coolidge Corner Waldo Durgan overlay district. To step back for just a minute, the 40B proposal that's been submitted and is pending in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals as of now, as of this point in time, is 12 stories tall, 299 apartments, 333 parking, including above ground and below ground spaces. This is a massing of the 40B, again, conceptual, where that permit is being looked at now. It's all continuous 1 building with Waldo Street going underneath and under and through the residential building. Just to orient everybody, this is Pelham Hall to the right. This is Beacon Street with the tracks. This is the SS Pierce building, the CVS that's on the corner. The mixed-use proposal is a hotel and residential building. The residential building is 143 apartment units as currently proposed, 13 stories plus a mezzanine, the ground floor having commercial space, the hotel being proposed as a combination of 8 and 10 stories in height, 210 hotel rooms, and meeting rooms and amenity space on the ground floor. All of the spaces for the proposed development are contemplated to be an underground parking garage, and that parking, as you'll see in various documents, will be unbundled, meaning this is just an important concept, meaning that the price for that parking will be charged separately from somebody renting a hotel room or somebody renting an apartment unit. So this is a schematic concept massing of the mixed-use proposal. The amount of square footage between the 2, between the 40B and the mixed-use proposal, is pretty close to the same. What's different, what the committee's worked on to date, is separating out the massing into two different buildings. So this is the residential building on the corner of Pleasant and John Streets, in the hotel building stepping from 10 stories down to 8 stories. This is a quick snapshot of what that might look like, rather than being up in the air and looking down on the whole Coolidge Corner area. This would be like looking from Nina's Lighting across Beacon Street, this being Pleasant Street going down. So on your right is Pelham Hall, and this is the proposed residential building. This top floor is set back. There's a couple setbacks. And then the hotel, 10 stories, stepping down to 8. Zoning does not prescribe any kind of window treatments, masonry. So the look of all of this could and maybe should change as it goes through the design review. But just as humans, it's easier for us to understand massing when it's fully visualized like this. This view is from the corner of, say, the Capital One Pete's space on Beacon Street, looking diagonally across at the CVS, the hotel behind it, and the residential building to the right, and Pelham Hall to the right of that. So there's a couple categories of advantages that the committee felt like was worth talking about for the overlay zoning to allow a mixed-use scenario rather than all residential 40B. One is that we have more town control. The 40B, as you guys know very well, the 40B process utilizes a state regulation. If we were to pass zoning to allow mixed-use development, we would have more local control, including a longer design review process, as well as conditions on the permit that can be ongoing in time, like traffic mitigation and traffic monitoring. Whereas 40Bs, we have to do conditions for that point in time, and then that's it. We'll also talk about neighborhood benefits, the financial impacts to the town, and some of the environmental sustainability commitments. We're providing this kind of whole suite of what we'd like for this development to look like. We're protecting the town's interests through several ways. One is having it be a major impact project, which a lot of large developments do. That's currently in our zoning as a process. That process includes a design advisory team appointed by the planning board, and usually takes 6 months, probably more like 12 months for a project of this size. We also have a specific requirement that the planning board will do site plan review. That's in addition to our normal process of having engineering or staff provide site plan review early on, so that it's very integrated as the process moves forward to the planning board. It would require a series of special permits by the Board of Appeals. So that's kind of the zoning piece. And then separately, we have the memorandum of agreement, design guidelines, which were recently adopted by the planning board. So that's now in place if this development moves forward. And that includes significant work that was done primarily by the architects on our committee, kind of furthering, maybe not appropriate for zoning, but furthering and documenting where the committee would like to see the mixed-use development move towards, or pieces that were really important to include if this moves through a special permit process. One of the most, in my opinion, the most significant pieces that the mixed-use proposal does, not strictly through zoning, but with the memorandum of agreement, is have in writing a commitment from Chestnut Hill Realty to provide off-site open space. And we'll go through that in a minute, but the concept is that a town-owned parcel that has 14 parking spaces would be able to be landscaped and completely used for park space, and the use of those 14 spaces would then go underground within the project site. The committee also spent significant time talking about pedestrian circulation through the site. We went through various iterations of different types of underground parking, structured parking, mechanical parking, the cost of those different types of things, and to make sure that there was bicycle storage beyond what's required in our guidelines. And we talked about architecture integrating with the neighborhood. The ground floor space was especially important. by the residents that we had meetings with in the Waldo Garage, and also subsequent meetings with precinct members from 2, 8, 9, and 10. The most common comment, this was last summer and fall, that we got was for the committee to continue to work on, which they were able to get Chestnut Hill Realty to agree to, further commitments for a cafe space on the ground floor of the residential building, as well as a non-residential use in what's being proposed as co-working office space. There are parking spaces within the proposed development for the adjacent residents. That's because the lot that's next to the Durgon Garage currently owned by Chestnut Hill Realty is utilized by condo owners in the neighborhood. So that's being accounted for in the proposal. And finally, the hotel meeting space as part of the memorandum of agreement will be available to community groups. So this is the site that we looked at before, the Waldo and Durgon Garage. Here's Pleasant Street, John Street, the library is right down here. Over here is about 7,000 square foot lot that's owned by the town, will remain owned by the town. Right now there's a little bench area that was recently given a facelift last year or so. There are 2 curb cuts here, 14 spaces that are not used by the general public but are used in the daytime by our commercial merchant parking permit program and available in the evening for overnight parking. So that is the area where Chestnut Hill Realty has agreed to take those spaces, provide it within the development, and pay for this pavement to come up and provide open space for the town. This is a concept of what that might look like. Again, here's John and Green Street. This is the existing plaza space that you'll see if you walk by, and instead of the 14 spaces, for it to be landscaped. I will also tell you that it is extremely likely that the Parks and Rec Commission will be going through a design review process as they do with any park, and so this design, I can guarantee, is going to change. This is an exhibit of what Chestnut Hill Realty has agreed to do. So we can move forward with that design as it is furthered, and this is what the commitment is from Chestnut Hill Realty. I don't have a slide for it, but in addition to this, in the memorandum of agreement, Chestnut Hill Realty has also agreed to put in irrigation and landscaping and some benches right in the front part of the Coolidge Corner Library. This was a request that came from committee discussions. So other neighborhood benefits, certainly pedestrian circulation, things like possibly having bump outs on the corner of John and Green Street, so the curb bumping out so that the crossings of those streets are shorter, crosswalks where there aren't, like going across Pleasant Street, having a don't block the box painting. This is a concept of where we're at today with some initial conversations with our traffic division consultants and Chestnut Hill Realty's traffic consultant, that this will all be further refined as if the development moves forward through special permit process. There are some, in the memorandum of agreement, there are some special permit conditions that you'll see, which include language about these kinds of mitigation, but also includes the Chestnut Hill Realty being on the hook for having 25% concept plans for a potential bike lane to be accommodated on John Street, as well as the widening of the sidewalk on Harbor Street. Again, those aren't things that the town is saying we know what we want, but there are things that have been discussed at a committee level and Chestnut Hill Realty is agreeing to do if the town wants them to do so. There have been discussions about a desire line going from the Coolidge Corner Library, which is just off the map here, through the heart of this 1.3 acre site towards like the farmer's market and Brookline Booksmith, and both Chestnut Hill Realty as well as the property owner, the Tuck family, where the Booksmith is, which is this space right here, as well as the Booksmith itself, are all in early conversations about making this idea happen, which is to have a privately operated but connection that connects the hotel lobby through the Booksmith and out the front door. People think that would be good for the community, good for the hotel, good for the Booksmith. Let's see. You will also see in the memorandum of agreement a commitment to have a blue bikes station somewhere within the development site, and also some significant on-site open space in addition to the off-site open space that I talked about earlier. a large amount of time was spent with our architects on the committee and adjacent residents on talking about John Street and how it will transition, and acknowledging that this is, 3.5-story, very typical North Coolidge Corner building typology that has building, residential condos, kind of a transition area of stairs and some landscaping in front of the building, and then a public sidewalk, street trees, and then parking lane. And when we look at the same street, but in reverse, looking at where Pelham Hall is, looking back, looking opposite of that photo that you just saw, this is the Durgon Garage as it currently is. The condition is building, right on the property line, sidewalk, trees that have pretty much died in the tree pits that are left, and then parking lane. And so one thing that you'll see in the design guidelines as well as zoning is a concept of having a building setback on John Street so that the existing condition will look more like the transition between building and street that we see in the John Street condos. Another trick of the eye that the committee has talked about and is in the design guidelines is to continue the facade, the cornice line of the condos into the large massing of the residential building by having some of the residential units have their doors on the sidewalk. It kind of transitions from the condo building to the larger residential building. Piece that was very important from the town meeting members and we heard from adjacent residents, as well as from the business owners that are currently in this space. As I said, 2 of the 5 storefronts are currently occupying the Pleasant Street space still. And the convenience store provides very much it's a community amenity. It's an important kind of nucleus of this whole area, and also the Jerusalem restaurant as well. So the community said, if this space is going, if it's going to be either a 40B or mixed use, no matter what happens with town meeting, it was very important for the community to see some of that kind of, the planners call it third spaces, but cafe space or co-working space where the community can walk into that building from Pleasant Street. And this is a blow-up of that. So those are requirements, both a combination of the zoning, the design guidelines, as well as the MOA. The financial impacts to the town, we'll talk first about property tax revenue. As a select board, you guys probably know this already, but our commercial properties are taxed at a rate of, right now, of about 1.64 times the residential rate. In the hotel room, we get occupancy excise taxes for about 6% of the room revenue. There's a residential valuation, which changes based on the mix of market and affordable units. And then kind of combining that all together, the models that Pam McKinney helped start, and then Ken Lewis, who is on Economic Development Advisory Board, we're looking at stabilized occupancy, that total revenue of being about $3.36 million a year to the town. To give you a sense, that's about $3 million higher than the existing tax revenue and about $1.65 million higher than what would happen with the 40B estimate.
I'll just note that the $3 million additional tax revenue, that's the equivalent of 1 year's override that we asked for last year. So that's hefty.
In addition to the financial impacts to the town meeting members asked for, and the neighborhood asked for, and Chestnut Hill Realty agreed to, and you'll see it in the memorandum of agreement, terms that would be favorable to the existing tenants, making sure that they had adequate notice, and also looking for ways that they could recoup some cost if the existing building needs to be shut down. So advantages of the mixed-use proposal also include a tax certainty agreement. That's something we've done a couple of times in our larger development projects. And that's in the off chance that a hotel building, for example, were to become owned by some nonprofit entity, that this would be an agreement that's at the Registry of Deeds and protects the town's revenues for property taxes for 95 years. There's another advantage of the mixed-use proposal is lower demand on municipal services because of the fewer residential units in this one, concentrated in this one place. And then the hotel guests themselves, we heard at the advisory subcommittee, at the planning board, some of our businesses come out and talk about the vitality that having additional hotel guests and residents at this site will bring to the whole Coolidge Corner Commercial District. Right now, our Coolidge Corner businesses, about 50% of their business comes from residents in Brookline and 50% from the greater Boston area or outside travelers. So they welcome both, both residents and visitors from outside. So environmental sustainability, again, this is a combination of the zoning and the MOA and the design guidelines are where you'll see these. In addition to the landscape open space on-site and off-site, Chestnut Hill Realty has agreed that the entire development be LEED Silver certifiable, and that's the newest version, version 4, for both buildings. They've also, we're very hemmed and very, we have very little ability to require any energy use and targets or building codes that are different from the state's, what state allows us to do. So not in the zoning, but in the MOA, there's language about Chestnut Hill Realty agreeing that the energy use intensity targets be better than what we already require through the state building code and stretch codes. They've also agreed to help the town get to zero emissions goal by 2050 by looking at the viability of different methods, including an all-electric HVAC system, which could help get to lower emissions, but no hard commitments on that, just the commitment to looking at all of those evaluations. This is also important as we move forward with other large developments. If we can say Chestnut Hill Realty is providing a model, and now as time moves forward, we can ask for something that's appropriate for 3 or 4 years from now. So we talked a lot about parking, which I'm sure you won't be surprised. That's a common conversation in Brookline. And there's kind of two alternative thoughts on this. One is Field of Dreams. If you build the parking, the cars will come. And the other is if you have too few parking spaces available, that there's circulating of cars trying to find a space. That also impacts the neighborhood. There's also a trade-off between building mass and open space. And the committee looked at different scenarios of trying to do that. The underground parking spaces is very expensive and is driving the height of the residential building. We looked at other scenarios that included just the residential building, for example, or one floor of underground spaces to see if we could get the residential building to be shorter, and we centered back to the proposal that's in front of you. The zoning bylaw has existing minimum parking ratios. The overlay district, if a developer were to meet certain requirements, would be allowed to seek relief from those minimum ratios so that the parking is less than what's currently required under the underlying zoning. And we talked about the replacement parking for the condo owners. There's also language with our existing transportation guidelines to make sure that there's electric vehicle charging stations, the potential for shared vehicle spaces like Zipcar. We talked about unbundled parking. There's an important piece in here in the zoning that predicts, that allows for future uses of the underground garage if the parking demand decreases over time. One stage of that is that any excess parking be available to employees or residents of the neighborhood, and then following that, allowing for any underground garage space be able to be retrofit for other uses without it counting towards the floor area ratio within the zoning. This would likely not be a residential unit since it's underground. For example, if the co-working space were to expand like as a business incubator space, you could imagine meeting spaces or something like that, that's below ground in the garage currently. I'm going to skip that for a minute. And Roger, would you be willing to come up and talk about the affordable housing piece?
The affordable housing component of this proposed plan is, in the view of both the Housing Advisory Board and the Development Committee that has been working on this, is a very positive component of the overall project. It's a negotiated piece. The inclusionary zoning bylaw, which applies to large multifamily rental developments like this, would normally require a straight 15% of the total 143 units in the proposed rental building to be on-site affordable housing. So that is a 21-unit requirement if it were applied according to the formula. Fortunately, the zoning bylaw allows the town to negotiate alternative outcomes for affordable housing, so long as the town finds that it's in the town's interest to do so. And in this instance, we think that there's a good outcome that takes account of the perspectives of different stakeholders in this project, in addition to the dimension of affordable housing production by itself. The proposal and the process leading to this included a desire by many folks for the building to be smaller than the earlier proposed height and density. And one way to achieve that got attention as a result from the Housing Advisory Board, and then along with a lot of engagement with Chestnut Hill Realty, was to consider, first of all, the fact that 21 units in a building of this size would translate into approximately 2 stories out of the, excuse me, 12 plus stories at that time. So the bylaw allows the town to negotiate a buyout, so to speak, where affordable units that would normally be required on-site can instead be translated into a lump sum payment by a developer into the Housing Trust Fund, which is where part of this proposal went. What you're looking at here is a compromise, in part because there's also a considerable interest from an affordable housing perspective and widespread in the town and shared by the HAB that a project of this size should have some significant number of on-site affordable housing units, irrespective of what might be negotiated off-site. So the outcome here was one in which instead of equivalent of 2 stories of affordable housing units, there will be 1 equivalent story of affordable housing units, bearing in mind that the actual units will be spread throughout the building. So 11 of the 21 required units will remain on site, and in lieu of the remaining 10 units on site, the developer, through a negotiated process with the HAB, will be making a single payment to the trust fund in the amount of $3.275 million. Quick division, which you've probably already done. If that's a 10-unit buyout, that means that the payment to the town is approximately $330,000 per unit of the 10 units that are not going to be physically on site. The reason that is beneficial to the town is that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, over a period of years, has been able to make other very desirable affordable housing projects throughout the town, including St. Aidan's and Dummer Street and Olmsted Hill, and recently a double renovated rooming house on Beale Street. We've been able to make those desired projects in town feasible using the trust fund and mission-based developers that bring other state and federal money into the process. The long and short is that The record of the trust fund is that the cost per affordable unit, compare this with the $330,000 per unit that we're getting in, has averaged only $50,000 a unit, and the most expensive in St. Aidan's was about $100,000. So we have every reason to believe that this funding will be able to be rechanneled into, over a period of several years, into other affordable housing projects which the town wants and works with mission-based developers to produce. A multiple of the 10 units. I don't want to project too optimistically, but certainly 3 to 1 and possibly as much as 5 or 6 to 1 of these 10 units will eventually get produced in terms of the affordable unit count. This is important because, as you know, the choice here is between a 40B and this mixed-use development. The actual number of units in a 40B, if it were on site, and this would also take time, would be 20% of the 299 units that you saw, or 60 affordable units. So we think that there's this is a wonderful compromise that the town's negotiated that will produce a better overall outcome because this project is so much more desirable, and the number of affordable housing units will, if not equal or exceed the 60, come very close, and of type that the town will find in most ways more desirable than in a 40B.
Thank you.
I believe it's just one more slide. Yeah, so this is our closing slide reminding us that there's 4 main documents: the zoning, the guidelines, which again have been adopted, the memorandum of agreement, and the tax certainty agreement. I will flag for everybody that's paying attention that we will come back to a future town meeting to ask town meeting to adopt the public use easement. This is for the pedestrian way through the site. We want to do that after the special permit is up, the residential building is starting to be built, and make sure that we get the boundaries of that easement exactly right. So that's it.
Okay. I chaired that committee, and I see a number of the members here. Committee's been meeting now for a couple of years. We've had a lot of meetings. The project has gone through a bit of an evolution. There's been a lot of committee input and community input. I personally think this is a really nice project that really is going to transform what is now probably the last, I'll call it blighted, because it really is a corner of Coolidge Corner, into a vibrant, livable space. Questions from the board? Yeah.
You talked about the parking and the fact that it's unbundled from the residential apartments and the hotel rate. So what does that mean? I mean, we do, from the hotel and the use of the hotel, we get a room rate tax, basically. So what does that do to that tax?
I would want to defer to Gary McCabe, who, our tax assessor, who obviously is not here tonight. What I can tell you is that residential properties across town, multifamily residential properties, often include an additional line item. When you look up a property card of parking spaces, you'll see parking spaces 30, and it's often, not always, based on rental income of those parking spaces. But
yeah.
You gotta go to the mic, Sergio.
Our vast TV audience needs to hear your wisdom, Sergio.
If I understood Ms. Heller's question, the issue is what is the impact to the town on the excise tax revenue created by the separation of the parking
Correct.
room rate? The answer is that by state law, the excise tax only applies to the room rate. So it has no impact.
Okay.
But if the parking were included in the room rate, then, but it's negligible. But got it. Okay.
This should be confirmed by somebody who knows more than I. That's what I've been told when the question was asked.
Okay.
So you mean if you have a room rate of, $100, but with a parking of $20, but if you said that you had $120 of a room rate and parking was free, you don't escape the excise tax that way? I mean, you end up, the excise tax is separated out and they say, okay, the room is only 100 and the parking is 20, even though that's not how it's advertised, that's not how it's marketed, et cetera.
But I think there's also a public policy
Okay.
reason to unbundle the room from the parking. And I suspect the overall, even if it were taxable to us, the loss of revenue wouldn't be that much to overcome the public policy purpose for the unbundling. But that's a value judgment, I guess. I know members of this board have seen this presentation before, and hence not so many questions. This is a public hearing. If there's any members of the public who wish to speak on this, there's 3 warrant articles: the zoning, the memorandum of understanding, the authorization, and then the tax certainty. Yeah, Mr. Modigliani.
I'm Sergio Modigliani. I was a member of the committee. I think it may have been closer to 3 years rather than 2. I think that I really only want to leave you with a couple of what I think are very positive thoughts. The first is that it was a committee that included, fortunately, abutters and town meeting members who were very clear and very proactive in making known those things that were important to the neighbors and to the community, and worked very hard in what I consider to be a very thoughtful and considerate effort of negotiation in a give and take, which, as you can imagine, is what's involved in this kind of undertaking. By the nature of our zoning bylaw, the owner of the property, which is not the town, but is Chestnut Hill, needed the town to provide opportunity through zoning relief in order for them to maximize their opportunities. And we, on the town side, had a number of things that we wanted and were interested in achieving in return for that. And that, I believe, is what's before you. And I think it's been well crafted. And I leave you also with an important thought, which is that our partner to the town in this undertaking, because this is, after all, a public-private kind of an example here, our partner, Chestnut Hill Realty, is local. This is somebody who's been a part of the town of Brookline for many years, and moreover, have made known that it's their current intent to retain ownership of this property. So it's not a flip situation, get in, get out, but rather a partner who's committed to staying the course and remaining an integral part of town. So I urge all of you to give all your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Christ? Or Mr. Christ, and then, okay.
My name's Alan Christ, and I was on the committee, and I'm a town meeting member. The proposed scheme for Waldo Durgan, the mixed-use scheme, is a project with many positive attributes, particularly when you compare it to the proposed 40B project for the same site. Architecturally, the scheme has reduced the height of the originally proposed 40B while breaking the form down into 2 smaller stepped masses, which have substantially fewer shadow impacts upon the abutters. The revised scheme greatly improves the connectivity, sustainability, and street activation of the entire project relative to both the existing structures and the proposed 40B. Several measures are designed to improve the connectivity of the site. A lot of this we've heard from Cara. Breaking the project up into 2 buildings allows for the creation of a new living street, which is designed as a more active and variegated streetscape that privileges pedestrians and bicycles over cars while directing automobile traffic away from the Beacon and Pleasant intersection and connecting pedestrian traffic from Beacon to the middle of the block. The project also improves connectivity by adding a potential connection to Harvard Street through the hotel lobby and the Booksmith, and by reorganizing the existing alley behind the hotel with a more functional parking and loading configuration that will also improve conditions for the adjacent businesses. The mixed-use scheme also improves sustainability of the project site in several ways. In addition to the new living street, a new pocket park, as previously mentioned, will be created, and the design is intended to be LEED Silver certifiable, and it will target an energy use intensity which is significantly less than the average EUI for both the residential and hotel programs. There's also measures such as setting back the John Street facade to create a wider landscaped sidewalk along that area, and using engineered tree wells to ensure their longevity. Finally, in terms of sustainability, the design guidelines include measures. They recognize the importance of design for solar orientation in order to minimize energy use and encourage the use of roof decks when possible. Finally, the parking's been unbundled from the units and has been designed to allow conversion to other uses in the future, while the design makes provisions for a new blue bike station and potentially even electric charging stations. And what I think the best part of the scheme is that it will knit together Coolidge Corner and activate streetscapes in the neighborhood by animating the ground levels of the project throughout with multiple uses. And, you know, it includes the residential and hotel lobbies, hotel restaurant space, a corner cafe, and a large co-working space. And all this will transform a previously abandoned mid-block space into an important part of the Coolidge Corner urban fabric. The design guidelines encourage Waldo Durgan to maximize openness and transparency at the ground level, while the hotel and co-working space will provide numerous meeting and gathering spaces that will become assets for the larger neighborhood. In light of these attributes, I encourage you to improve the connectivity, sustainability, and street activation of Coolidge Corner by supporting the Waldo Durgan mixed-use project.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, Brian Coonley. I'm in a butter in Green Street, and I'm very excited about this project. I think it does many great things in the neighborhood. It increases walkability. It brings in more housing. As someone who lives in a one-bedroom apartment, having a hotel nearby, so my in-laws and even my family don't have to sleep in my living room when they visit, is really important. I'm very excited to see the increased walkability with the bump outs. Also, biking being essential with the blue bikes. The only real negative thing I'd like to see added on and considered would, especially on John and Pleasant Street, but I think also along on Green Street and possibly on Harvard, is bike lanes and bumping the parking spaces out and putting in protected bike lanes. I think would be an essential part of this project. If we're doing this project, that would be the perfect time to increase bikeability in the neighborhood. So thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Alperin.
Elton Alperin. I was on the architectural subcommittee of this process, and I'd like to speak very briefly just to express our optimism that going forward we can continue to refine, improve on all the positive things that Kara and Alan have laid out. We're positive because we think that up till now we've had a really good working relationship with Chestnut Hill Realty and their architect and landscape architecture. They've responded in many ways that have been spelled out here in detail, but we still think that what we look at now in images of the architecture is just a rough draft, not more massing models than anything else, and we look forward to working with the team on the refinement of materials and fenestration and all the details down at grade and sidewalks and planting, et cetera, that will make this project really sing. We also feel positive because we ourselves wrote the design guidelines and thought carefully about how the design guidelines relate to this particular project in this particular setting. So we're looking forward to this.
Yeah. I'll also second my experience with the developer in this project. They've been a very good and responsive partner to work with. So that's it's been great thus far. We'll see. Hopefully that'll continue. Any other comments from the public? Let's get down to business and looking at the warrant articles. I will say all three warrant articles have been through the advisory process, and shockingly enough, have gotten through the advisory process intact. Advisory voted all three warrant articles as submitted, which is a testament to the committee's work and staff's work in partnership with Chestnut Hill Realty. So I think that's great. It's been a very long but I think fruitful process, and I think the fact that it got through the tough advisory process so without changes is a testament to the thoroughness of the process. So I'm going to suggest that we vote tonight so that staff can work on the explanations in the warrant article, so we can get that done in a good way, and not be rushed at the end. So I'm going to move. I'll move the articles one at a time. And in Article 14, we're going to have an additional vote to approve the MOA itself, and this is actually a difference between what's happening here and some of the past experiences where the MOA has been presented to town meeting at the last minute. Here, an earlier version of the MOA was presented right when the warrant was published, and there have been some tweaks here and there, but essentially it's intact as presented. There are some relatively minor differences which will be given to town meeting and redlined, so they'll be able to see what the changes are. And I think that's one of the lessons learned from some of our past experiences, to try and get the MOA concluded earlier in the process, so there's a lot more transparency. So we have.
Before you make
yeah.
a motion, I just want to sing praises and the committee's praises.
Mine.
I am strongly in support of this suite of articles for, I think, many of the reasons that others have articulated. I do want to call out one thing that hasn't been mentioned yet, which I think is continuation of a positive trend, and bears calling out, especially as we embark on a parallel path, taking a look at our zoning bylaw, the continuation of the trend of using form-based zoning here, calling out specifically heights and setbacks of buildings, as opposed to relying on the more traditional gross floor area ratio. So I'm happy to see that here. I think it leads to a more predictable result, and thank you to the committee for advancing an article that utilizes that way of zoning and predicting exactly what a building is going to look like in form.
Okay. So I will move a favorable action recommendation on Article 13. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller.
Aye.
Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. So in Article 14, we'll have two votes. One is on the language of the warrant article. And then the language of the warrant article authorizes this board to enter into a memorandum of agreement and then outline some of the major provisions. We have negotiated a memorandum of agreement, and I'll move a second vote that authorizes this board to sign that memorandum of agreement, which will then be conditioned on a successful vote at town meeting. So the first vote is a favorable action recommendation on Article 14. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller.
Aye.
Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Yeah,
And before you take your next vote,
sure.
with two lawyers in the lobby, we found one Scribner's error
Okay.
that I would like to be reflected in your vote, and that's, if you look at the executed version, page 11, we're going to strike one word. This is paragraph little j. And it currently reads, "The project shall contain 14 underground parking spaces, which shall be made available for commercial merchant parking." We're asking to strike the word "to," and both parties are in agreement.
Okay. That's it?
That's it.
Okay. So I will move authorization to sign the MOA as amended, subject to a successful vote at the annual town meeting. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller.
Aye.
Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And then the last motion is a favorable action recommendation on Article, what article is it? It's Article 15, which is the technical tax certainty agreement. It's entitled the restrictive covenant, but the real effect is the tax certainty agreement. And all those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller.
Aye.
Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you very much. We're on our way to town meeting. Okay, we have one last warrant article, and I saw the petitioner here for it, but I don't see the petitioner here now, and this is for the Article 27, which is the resolution calling for an apology to Gerald Alston. Boy, and I'd hate to put this off because next week's
Stick my hand out and see if he's...
yeah.
Why don't we continue with some other things and see if he's around?
Yeah, we can start the licensing since it's 8 o'clock.
And I apologize ahead of time. I'm co-petitioner of a warrant article that is about to go before the advisory committee, so I may step out.
Okay. Nope. Okay. So let's move on to the licensing. And first up is Barcelona.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Select Board. Attorney Trish Farnsworth, and with me is Emilio Alfonso, the proposed manager. This is an existing all-alcohol restaurant license here in Brookline, and Del Frisco's purchased what's called the Barteca Restaurant Group, and they're a large, 31-unit over 10 states. There's 3 here in Massachusetts, 2 in Boston, 1 here in Brookline. They run under 2 trade names. One's Barcelona Wine, which is the one here in Brookline, and the other's Bartaco. The concept is just a tapas type of place. So anyway, Del Frisco's, as you know, would be familiar with Del Frisco's, big steakhouse, public company, they purchased it. So we're here for a change of ownership, but basically the licensed entity, the LLC, remains the same. The ownership is up the chain. And Mr. Alfonso has been with the restaurant for 7 years, and he will be the manager on the license. And the alternate manager is John Rizzo, and he's actually also been with the restaurant for the past 3 years. So same folks, new ownership, and we're just here to seek your approval.
Any changes to the operation? So
The menu?
So this seems pretty straightforward. It's a very popular restaurant. It's I've eaten there a number of times and have enjoyed it every time. So, any questions from the board? This
Police
is
have apparently approved the application.
right.
Is the pledge new, or is it an existing pledge?
Actually, when I looked at this application, it did not have a seeking approval of the pledge, even though there's a pledge agreement. I didn't see votes and things like that. So I think they'll come back for that approval of the pledge. Yeah. Because that's with the new lenders, obviously, for Del Frisco, so there's not a pledge on record.
Okay. This is a public hearing. If there are any members of the public who wish to speak on this, now is your time. I see none. So are we ready for a vote? Okay, so I'll move that we approve the application for a change of beneficial interest, change of manager and alternate manager for Barcelona Brookline LLC, doing business as Barcelona. A holder of all kinds of common victular. Manager of record will be Emilio Garcia. Alternate manager will be Jonathan Rizzo. And this item was continued from last week. So all those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco?
Aye.
Selectperson Heller?
Aye.
Selectperson Green?
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Next item up is the B. Is that going to be the name?
There is some discussion about doing a change to that DBA, but that's for a future.
Right, because there is a neighbor with a very
Yeah,
similar
the Busy Bee, right,
name.
Yeah, no, that will be changed in the future. So, well, I'm Jennifer DePazzo Gilbert, and I'm here representing 1032 Beacon Corporation, doing business as the Bee. I'm excited to be here for this license application. With me this evening is Ken Cuson, Corporate Secretary of the corporate entity. And also standing with me this evening is Cameron Dubois, the proposed manager of record. Both folks met earlier today with Lieutenant Raskin, had a very positive meeting, and he went over all of the intricacies and complexities of the board's regulations as well as the state regulations. The Newport Harbor Corporation will be the sole shareholder of the 1032 Beacon Corp. This applicant has a lot of experience operating numerous restaurants with liquor licenses throughout both Rhode Island and Massachusetts. You may know the Paparazzi Trattoria locations throughout the state. They run those. The corporate officers provided their queries and their fingerprints to the Brookline PD, and as I said, they met this afternoon. The proposed hours of operation, as well as the seating capacity, will be the same as it was for the former Waxy's pub down on Lower Beacon Street. As far as the entertainment, the applicant proposes to have radio and some taped music as part of this license. The neighborhood has been extremely supportive of this proposal, and earlier this evening I did see Mr. Paul Warren, who I know some time ago formed a neighborhood organization, and he has reached out and been extremely supportive. The neighborhood is excited to have this new restaurant and bar take over this old space, and the application was advertised to the abutters, were notified, and those certified mail receipts were dropped off with Tiffany, the town's new licensing clerk, earlier this morning. And so if there are any questions, we're here to answer them.
Why don't we hear from the public,
Okay.
and then we'll...
Sure.
So, come on up, Mr. Warren. I heard your name, and...
Good evening. My name is Paul Warren. I live at 71 Carlton Street, and I'm here to speak in support of the liquor license request being made by the Beacon Group. The St. Mary's neighborhood is a unique, high-density residential neighborhood with a one-block commercial district that serves the needs of the local residents and seasonal visitors, which we know we have quite a few in the Red Sox. Last fall, all of us experienced the overwhelming response from an engaged, thoughtful neighborhood that cares deeply for its community and local business district. When the neighborhood heard about the prospect of a vibrant new restaurant occupying the space at 1032 Beacon Street, I received hundreds, many hundreds, of emails of positive response and, in fact, commitments to frequent the restaurant. Let's hope the food's really great, and that commitment holds true. They do want to patronize, and I got a lot of notes about it adding to the quality of life in the neighborhood. I would like to recognize the Sheaf family for their willingness to be responsive to resident feedback and for their enabling a new important anchor restaurant to enter into our neighborhood. I know that I speak on behalf of many of the neighbors, some who are here this evening, when I say thank you to both Susan and Jordana Sheaf. They're very welcome for the neighborhood. It's really a great thing. I'd also like to thank each of you as members of the Select Board. Your patience, and I emphasize that, and thoughtful deliberations as new information was brought forward to you last fall has enabled a positive alternate option for the site that it's being embraced by the neighborhood. So your approval of the 1032 Beacon Court application would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Come on up, Mr. Franco.
Good evening. Jim Franco, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 1. I'm sorry to burden you with another comment, but as you know, many of the Precinct 1 Town Meeting members have been here before with respect to this space. So we'd like to welcome this new addition to the community, but the last two restaurants did have some problems. The board is well acquainted with those issues, but I'd like to just highlight them and hope that you will address them to the new applicant. And those include noise, kitchen noise at the end of the day when the kitchen is being cleaned up and trash is being brought outside. That's very noisy for the neighbors. The second area of concern was the patio and what the hours were going to be for serving in the patio and noise or music outside in the patio area. And just hope that you will do what you did for prior more troublesome exposures, and that is maybe set some hours, reduced hours for the patio serving. You're all well aware of this. We've been here before. Thank you so much. Welcome to the new restaurant.
Excuse me, Jim, could I just ask, if I recall correctly, we set those patio hours at 10 or 10:30 with a half an hour cleanup? Is that
That's
correct?
my recollection, and
So I've got the conditions that we attached on the predecessor license. There were 11 of them, and I'm
Did
just
that
gonna,
work?
as far as I know, it did work, yes. And I mean,
I'm just going to introduce these.
the applicant can come back. The last two exposures were quite troublesome, as you know. And there's a condominium that is right next to this.
Correct.
And that was the source of the trouble with the outdoor
I remember
patio.
hearing well.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yes, I guess, okay. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Let's just have a conversation about, okay, yeah. Come on up. Join the party. No, at the podium.
Introduce yourself.
My name is Millicent, last name Holder. I hope that in place of Waxy's comes a restaurant that sells fried clams and onions and other fried foods. You know what that's going to be, what restaurant is going to be in place of Waxy's?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about tonight.
So what's the name of the restaurant going to be in place of Waxy's?
Well, currently it's called The Bee, but that might change.
The Bee?
The Bee. And the concept is Italian? Yeah. So it'll be an Italian place.
It would be nice, too, if it would be an arts and crafts store. There's none around here in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Close by.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Let's have a conversation about some of the past issues in the space. And so prior tenants, there have been, I think in my 6 years on the board, this space has been before us at least twice with prior tenants with some issues relating to noise, especially on the patio, and then in the back, deliveries, and then noise at cleanup. So in the past tenant, we put conditions on the license, and I'd like kind of read through them and see what you think.
Thank you.
So for patio dining hours from 8 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. with cleanup finished and off premises by 11. No customers allowed on the patio before and after such hours, and liquor service for this patio would begin at 10 a.m.
That is acceptable.
Okay. No music, televisions, or other noise-producing devices on the patio.
That's fine.
No smoking signs will be installed on the patio.
Yes.
No paper or plastic plates, cups, or utensils on the patio?
I don't
where did that
see
one
any
come from?
problem with that.
Yeah.
It probably contributed to litter.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. No deliveries on St. Mary's Court prior to 8 a.m. No Sundays deliveries before noon. I think there was an issue for a prior tenant with real early morning deliveries.
Okay, we can make that work, and as Mr. Franco indicated, if things go well and we needed some little tweak
Right,
on
yeah.
that delivery, we would come back.
Right.
Yeah.
Waxies. The licensee will inform all the delivery vendors to never block access to any parking spaces and never interfere with access to and egress from St. Mary's Court. So this is concerned about the alleyway.
Sure.
And shall use all responsible efforts to enforce such, including signage notifying parties of the policy. Licensee will post a sign at the rear of the facility informing employees to be courteous to residential neighbors and maintain low noise levels, and management will make every effort to see that noise is minimal at the rear of the facility. All outdoor compressors, HVAC units, and kitchen ventilation, odor control systems, including those on the roof, shall at all times satisfy Brookline's noise control bylaw and regulations, so you're agreeing to abide by the law. Prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy, an independent acoustical engineer acceptable to the building department employed by the applicant shall certify that all said equipment, including any newly installed equipment, is in compliance with the noise control bylaw.
Absolutely.
No more than one malt beverage may be sold, delivered, dispensed, distributed, or served to any person at any one time. No service of pitcher or carafe sales of malt beverages.
Got it.
Is that on the patio or throughout the restaurant?
Throughout the restaurant.
That's throughout. I think that's part of the local regulation anyway.
Okay.
No pitchers and carafes.
Require security cameras to be installed in sufficient quantity and quality to cover the interior of the licensed premise, the outside sitting area, the front entrance and rear entrance. Due to past noise complaints, this is 2 tenants ago, from the rear of the location resulting from trash being removed from the premises, a camera covering the dumpster area should be included. The cameras should be maintained in working order, and data from the camera shall be held for 30 days. Camera data shall be made available upon request to town agencies such as police, fire, and health.
Are you planning on having a camera system?
Yes, that's fine.
I think health had to do with rodent problems.
Yeah, okay. And last, requires part of the policy for safe service of alcohol. Employees required to identify any patron who looks under 35, and failure to do so will result in disciplinary action. I guess that's in response to the proximity to BU.
Understood. No.
And those are the prior conditions on the space. They sound okay?
Clients hope to be a good neighbor and set a new precedent at that site.
Okay. Okay, well, this is going smoothly.
So when is last call for alcohol on those?
Well, the hours of operation go till 1 a.m.
Oh, no, on the patio.
On the patio, 10:30, is it?
I thought that's when the patio closes.
So that's
Dining
when it
hours.
closes. So
Closes at 11.
last call would be at
Okay.
10.
Well, I understood that as a condition, what we had last time was that the patio was closed and service was ceasing at 10:30. And then for the half an hour after that, from 10:30 to 11, was the cleanup time that the staff needed. And the problem last time was that there was a significant amount of noise to the condominiums that are next door, if I recall correctly, and I see Jim shaking his head. Yes, so I think that was the problem, is that there was or if they waited until it was midnight and people were sleeping and there was a lot of noise and laughing and talking among the staff, that was an issue.
Understood. So it's really intended to be a shorter window for the cleanup outside to stop at 11.
It's supposed to
Got it.
be a window of ceasing any, I would think that the last call for service would be around 10, so people have a chance to finish whatever they're eating
Get
and
out
drinking.
and then clean up
Then
starts.
they're gone at 10:30, and then between 10:30 and 11, the staff is cleaning up, and so that the neighbors aren't bothered after that by
No, that's
lot
a
of-
helpful clarification. Thank you.
Okay.
That's what
So, we ready for a vote? So I will move that we approve the application for a new all-alcoholic beverage beverage license to expose, keep for sale, and to sell all kinds of alcoholic beverages to be drunk on the premises as a 7-day common victualler for 1032 Beacon Corp., doing business as the Bee, and I presume you'll be back. At 1032 Beacon Street, Brookline, the manager will be Cameron Dubois. Proposed seating, are you going to have an alternate manager? I hope.
Yes, we will be back for an alternate manager and likely a DBA change.
Okay. You don't want to be there so many hours. Proposed seating is 122 in and 48 out. Occupancies 170. Proposed operating hours are Monday through Sunday, 8 a.m. to 1 a.m. And proposed alcoholic beverage service license hours are Monday to Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 a.m. Entertainment will consist of recorded music and radio. I will also move the conditions I read, which are the same conditions we had on the prior licensee at this location.
I don't see a report from the fire department. Did I miss it at our place?
I think it's the second page in your.
Is it?
So then,
Somewhere.
No, it's, on the cover page, it says, waiting on an inspection report. I see today we got police and we got health, but I don't see fire,
so it'll be conditioned on receipt of a favorable report from the fire department. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller.
Aye.
Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck. I must say, I've been to at least one of your places in Rhode Island, and the mooring. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Thank you. Okay, next up is Rod D.
Oh.
That's not you. Howdy.
How you doing?
Why don't you introduce yourself and
Yes.
tell us what's up?
Yeah, okay, so my name is Osman. I've been running Rodi Thai since 1995. I'm located at 1424 Beacon Street. So the reason why we are here today is because we need to change our common victualler license or to have a grant a new one to the new owner, Cdbg Krajan South.
Okay. So are you looking to make any changes?
Not big change at all.
No, okay. This is a very well-regarded restaurant, so I'm glad to hear that you're not looking to make any changes, but only for the better.
Yes.
Make any changes. You're not, there's no alcohol license. Okay. This looks pretty straightforward.
This one has slightly different hours, but nothing major. The current operation is Monday through Thursday, 11 a.m., 10 p.m., where
Opening another hour in the evening. Yeah. I don't have any concerns about that. This isn't a public hearing, but if any members of the public wish to speak on this, now is your time, or forever hold your peace. And I see none. Okay. Any questions from the board? Are we ready to vote?
Let's go.
Okay. This is just, it's too easy. The hardest part is going to be pronouncing your name. So I'll move that we approve the application of a new common victualler license, no alcohol, and entertainment for Krajan. Okay. Corp., doing business as Rod D. by Cite, at 1422 to 1424 Beacon Street, And this will be replacing the current Rod D. And you'll be the manager.
Yes.
And the hours of operation will be Monday through Sunday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and 16 seats. Entertainment will be radio and television.
I would just attach the condition that pending a successful fire department inspection. I don't see any correspondence from the fire department. And
Okay, so
I think,
it's,
I think that's one that.
I see a report from the police department, but I may have lost it in the blizzard of paperwork.
It's on the same page here.
It's on the same,
Well,
okay.
You know, actually, I'll correct that. Yes, it does. It has fire department approval.
Yeah.
Back in that page.
All right, I withdraw my condition then.
Okay, so all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Selectperson Franco?
Aye.
Selectperson Heller?
Aye.
Selectperson Green?
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Next up is Regal Beagle. I think we've seen you before.
Yes, Jennifer DePazzo Gilbert here with Susan Roberts, and I'm here on behalf of the Regal Beagle. So taking you back, the board was not pleased with the Regal Beagle when I came before you on February 26th, and the board voted to cancel the license, but unfortunately not effective until August 26th because there's a 6-month grace period. So I got my marching orders from the board, which was to negotiate with Susan Roberts and her clients to come up with some way to get that place back open and up and running. And so we worked very hard to come up with a management agreement. Megan Murphy and Luke Hayden are Susan's clients. They're here this evening smiling. That's wonderful because they weren't smiling in February. And now we have a management.
Now is Susie smiling? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
everyone is. So, and my client's not here, but he is somewhere smiling. So, there's no change of manager of record required according to Lieutenant Raskin because Luke Hayden is already the present manager of record, and there's just a management agreement that will need to go to the ABCC for approval. And if there are any questions, either Susan or I can answer them for you.
Okay, well, if everyone's happy, then I'm happy.
we're happy.
But is the public happy?
We don't know about the police department.
Oh,
It says
okay.
pending, so.
No, that,
We've got that one.
So the police are happy.
Police are happy.
Okay, police are happy, I'm happy.
Okay. Any members of the public? Do you wish to add to that? That is entirely up to you. Then, by all means, the floor is yours.
I would like the good luck to my clients as well. Susie Roberts here on behalf of manager under the management agreement, M&L Hospitality LLC. That company is owned by Megan Murphy and Luke Hayden. Megan Murphy has also been cleared to be a manager. They're each managers of the LLC, but Megan will also be a manager, actually. Again, we are very happy that we were able to come to an agreement, and I appreciate all the efforts of your office and so forth to make this happen. And just so you know, I did explain what the intent had been when we were here a couple of months ago, which is a somewhat similar restaurant with a new and fresh face. We're going to have, actually a chef who used to be at the restaurant a couple of years ago is coming back. Going to be called Parlor, and there's a sign up in the door at the moment. Both Megan Murphy and Luke Hayden are busy doing some renovation, some cosmetic kinds of things, and we hope to be up and running by June 1st or thereabouts. So we've dealt with all of issues with Lieutenant Raskin, and the application I think is in good order to go to the ABCC. So. We're all set.
Any changes to the menu and the concept?
Or things you're keeping, like the fireside chat.
Well, come on up and This is your opportunity to market yourself.
Hi, how are you? I'm Megan Murphy. Luke is on his way. So we both were part of management team for Regal Beagle while it was open in some capacity in the past 9 years or so. We know the neighborhood, we know the clientele, we know what they like. Being on the bar instead of the owner, we actually got the real opinions from the people, which was nice. So I think that we actually know how to move forward. But yeah, there'll be some aesthetic changes, just some revamping. Needed a good old bath after about 6 months of sitting there. And Chef Stacy Cogswell will be part of our team as well. She was on Top Chef. She was part of the Regal Beagle in 2012 to 14. So we're just very excited. We've been talking to people at the Booksmith and at the theater, and very much are just excited to be part of the community.
Okay, great. Any other questions from the board?
I will just say, I am so delighted. So I was heartbroken when I got the news that Regal Beagle was closing.
We also were a little surprised and a little.
So this is great for the community. It's a prime spot. So I'm really pleased to see that you all worked something out.
And actually, considering the spot, I will say something about the landlord who was willing to work with my clients from the start. So that has been a very good experience, and I really commend them for working with us. So that's very much appreciated.
Okay. Yeah. So I will move, we ready for a vote?
Yep.
Okay. I will move that we approve the application of Beta 2 Group LLC, doing business as Regal Beagle, 308 Harvard Street, for approval of a management agreement with M&L Hospitality LLC. The manager will be Megan Murphy, and the alternate manager will be Luke Hayden. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller.
Aye.
Selectperson Green.
Aye.
Selectperson Hamilton.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck. And now we're back to warrant articles. I still don't see the petitioner on Article 27, which is unfortunate.
I wonder if he's down with the advisory committee.
Yeah, I'm supposed to go down to advisory committee. Do you want, I
Yeah,
can do that right now and
Yeah, we'll
see if
send
they-
him up if he's down there.
Try to hold off voting on mine till I get back.
We'll do our best.
Yeah, well-
We're not going to make any promises, but.
If you adjourn, I won't hold it against you.
So, Melissa,
Give you
you're
an
our
update
guide,
of where
eh?
we are. So Heather, they're still talking parking, and that have been for quite some time. 5 minutes to wrap. Okay, very good. So Article 16, we put on there for a possible vote. Obviously, the advisory committee has been debating that for quite some time tonight. You have at your places the advisory committee's subcommittee recommendation. Given the length of the debate for the full committee, I don't know how that will have changed.
Yeah, so why don't we defer that for the moment?
Okay.
And I have a feeling Selectperson Hamilton's not going to be here for the EV, being that she just, so let's skip that
Okay.
too.
Sure.
I see the petitioner for the outdoor pool, so we might as well.
So the update on the outdoor pool is that Select Board Green's language was rejected by the moderator. So we are
Win
back.
some, you lose some.
A little slap on the wrist for you, Bernard. Stay in your lane.
So we are back to, needing to reconsider and then look at the language that you have for the original article. I think the advisory committee has already taken a vote. Right, so the advisory committee motion is currently, that should be also in your packet as well.
So the advisory
In your
committee
binder.
motion, am I looking at the right one? It's in the
Should be
book.
in the binder, yes.
Yeah, okay. Top page of the binder. So it shortens the whereas clause, which talks about surprisingly the website blog for Golke Pools of Denton, Texas asserts blah, blah, blah. So it just says, whereas the town was the site of the first public indoor pool.
Swimming pool.
Was the site of the first public indoor swimming pool. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Really?
The tank. And then, whereas the town's action plan 2006 had already recommended preparation of a feasibility study, so now, therefore, be it resolved, town meeting calls for preliminary study of locating and operating an outdoor swimming facility for Brookline residents to be led by Department of Parks and Open Space, any location deemed appropriate to evaluate with such initial analysis serving as the preparatory for a more comprehensive study to be initiated thereafter. Any comments? So I will move, well, I have to move first to reconsider. So we all voted in the end. No, we all voted for the, so any one of us. No, but in the end, that was 3-2 for the substitute motion.
Once that passed.
And then, so we all voted for for your language.
My ill-fated
Rejected language.
Your rejected language. So
Worse things could happen.
I will move reconsideration of Article 30. Is that what it is?
Yep.
Okay, all those in favor, Select Person Franco.
Aye.
Select Person Green. Select Person.
What am I, chopping everything?
Select Person Heller.
Aye.
And Select Person Green already voted.
Also high.
And the chair votes aye. And I will move the advisory committee language, which excises the word indoors, outdoor pool. Well, the concept. So we're only seeing an outdoor pool. All those.
Outdoor swimming facility.
Outdoor swimming facility. Well, it could be.
Well, swimming pool.
Well, it could be it could be a pool and a hot tub, a pool and a.
Or we could bring back the concept of using the Reservoir Park as a swimming facility.
Right, maybe it's converted to a skating rink in the winter.
Okay.
Pull off the grass and use the underground pool.
Getting giddy. All those in favor of the advisory committee motion, please say aye. Select Person Franco.
Aye.
Select Person Heller.
Aye.
Select Person Green.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
And we thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. We actually accomplished something.
So Article 23 is on hold. Article 24 is also being discussed tonight at the advisory committee. So I don't have any language changes from what you originally heard from the petitioner.
So is the subcommittee recommending any changes there?
I don't have any subcommittee recommendation on that particular article.
Okay.
Which one are you?
We were on a
24.
roll.
24.
There's a
24.
24. I believe that the Climate Action Committee endorsed the article, recommends that we pass the article as. But I thought Zoe had just come in. Is she?
You know, I'm inclined to live dangerously, and if they tweak the language, we can always reconsider it. But let's get it moving, because next week's going to be a long meeting. So I will move. Back up. Any discussion of Article 24? I think it's pretty well constructed, well thought out. Mr. Lescoyer did, I think, a very good, thorough job. And something we can
Yes, he did.
live with. And if the advisory committee plays with the language, we'll deal with that later. So I will move and live dangerously Article 24 as presented in the warrant with the appropriate change at the beginning, substituting to see if the town will adopt, would be voted the town will adopt. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller.
Aye.
Selectperson Green.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Article 26, the advisory committee will be voting on Thursday evening. I was at the subcommittee meeting where they voted the language as submitted in the warrant. So you have a position of the subcommittee of the advisory committee at this point.
Here, too, I think it's a pretty well thought-out warrant article.
Let's vote.
So let's live dangerously and lead on this one. So I will move a favorable action recommendation on Article 26. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco.
Aye.
Selectperson Heller.
Aye.
Selectperson Green.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Article 28, you have the school subcommittee language for that article. Mike Sandman had sent that. I don't have a full committee vote as of yet. That will be later on this week as well.
I'll tell you, this is one, okay, the petitioner has already said she doesn't like the school subcommittee language. On this one, I would suggest we wait to see what advisory does with it. The net effect of both versions is the same. It encourages our state representatives and to vote for a specific legislative bill.
I hate to have to debate this at town meeting.
Right.
Given that both versions basically do the
They
same thing.
they get to the same place. They just, the route they get there is a bit
Let me
different.
just express my opinion that, you know, the whereas clauses here discuss the history, and I think it's important that we remember the history, that we understand the history, that
But I think
to the extent that children are involved in the understanding of the redesign of the flag, that they understand the history as well. So I don't see any point in taking it out. And so to me, you know,
Well, I
I
think
would
we should
either.
wait for advisory, see what they say. I mean, I think it is important in terms of how we are, yeah. In terms of, excuse me, I'm getting cramp.
it's hard to think it this time.
Yeah. In terms of, you know, how we're presenting history to our children, and I just am uncomfortable with some of the statements in the original warrant article that, you know, may be right, may be wrong, but sort of miss some of the nuance of history that I think is important to recognize. So let's see what the advisory says.
I'm okay with that. Which brings us to the EV warrant article.
So they're currently taking that up. A few things have happened since the last time we met. You directed staff to provide some edits to the existing warrant article, which we did. Those edits were then taken by the Climate Action, Select Board's Climate Action Committee, and further editing was made. And so there is new language that should be at your places as a result of that. I also printed out the petitioner was kind enough to mark up the changes against where the advisory committee subcommittee was. And I suspect that there would likely be changes, just because, you know, the moderator commented on all of these motions that you could tell that there are multiple authors. So there, I would imagine there would be some cleanup work.
So it sounds like this one isn't ready yet either.
But I'll hand you the markup just so you can see kind of where we're at in relation to advisory as well.
It was voted by a majority of the Climate Action Committee last night. The vote was 8-2-0. I wasn't actually present for the vote because I had to go upstairs to a high school meeting, but I would have voted in favor, so, just so you know.
I'd be curious to know what the basis for the opposition was. If it was.
Don't know, Zoe is right here, she could probably answer that question.
So, they voted downstairs?
No, we were just asked to go last.
Okay.
They were still talking about parking.
So this is the latest compilation of all the changes, I think. We have an extra copy.
I was just telling the board that I had missed the actual vote, but I knew that it was 8-2-0, and I would have voted in favor of it, but people were asking questions about what was the source of the opposition, what were the concerns?
I think it was primarily process-related. Staff got things down at 6:05, and they took it up at 6:35, so they didn't have a chance to get it by email ahead of time, and
We were basically verbally telling them what the changes were, but they didn't have the actual document in front of them.
Right,
So-
it was on the screen.
Yeah, but it was difficult to really wrap your head around the changes, just seeing part of the document on the screen.
it's not a policy-related issue. I think in general, the Climate Action Committee's on board. It was just, they were communicating displeasure with me. It was just a moment. They just wanted to make sure that I knew that their vote wasn't guaranteed.
Welcome to Brookline.
So I don't think you have to worry about, do you agree?
I would
Yeah.
agree. It was
Yeah.
more process-related than anything substantive.
Okay, so let's talk about the direction this is going. From just looking at this, I'm seeing striking out some of the real very proscriptive stuff to give the chief procurement officer a bit more discretion, which I think is probably a good thing, if everyone's cool with that.
The concept was pretty straightforward as a warrant article, but of course, the devil is in the details. So as we've learned, a lot goes into the budget-making process, and so this will allow our staff to really kind of holistically take a wider lens to this process, and maybe even get a little more creative, instead of just treating it like a procurement warrant article targeting vehicles, maybe some behavior as well in policy implementation, creation and implementation.
Another very important change here is pushing it to the next fiscal year to give us time to adjust our budget and adjust our processes. This is kind of like steering an ocean liner, and takes a little time to get it righted in the correct direction.
And one of the more valuable comments that we got back from Dr. Jett, who I did not realize was part of Climate Action, was he really wanted some assurance that, some verification that the end user is comfortable in a technology like this. So to be able to pilot something and to demonstrate that it can be used for our municipal purposes, I think would go a long way.
And I just want to add one more thing as well, is that, we have been talking about the pool vehicles that are currently in the budget, and we are trying to see if we can get the policy in line in order to implement it. So we've agreed to pause on the pool vehicles. They'll still be funded in fiscal '20, but we'll see if we can get the policy in a place where, we could potentially implement it in '20 as well.
Excellent.
I see some mention of, or I see carving out of public safety vehicles, which I don't think was in the previous version, and specifically aligning with some external requirements, the Michigan State Police Vehicle Test, and then the NFPA 1901 standard. These are all things that we're doing today. It's just
These are the current standards for public safety vehicles. I think we wanted to put that in there so that people didn't, people who may not understand why we don't have electric vehicles for police as of yet. They wait, the Michigan kind of sets the standard for police vehicles. We're implementing hybrids in fiscal '20. They've already kind of gone through that process with Michigan State Police, so.
Mr. Gray, how do you feel about the way this is evolving? Are you okay with it?
Come up to the mic.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's fantastic. I'm delighted to see the staff taking such an active role in helping think through how to do this and making plans. So it's fantastic.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, and this is your first shot of the warrant article, so one of the things, I guess, you have to approach this with a bit of flexibility. And you're trying to achieve something, and sometimes the original language needs to be tweaked, and so I'm glad that you're working the process.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak? Ms. Sokol? Or
It's important to have public comment.
Yes, I didn't realize there was no public comment downstairs, so I'll come upstairs. Make a comment that, of course, Mothers Out Front members are very excited to see this kind of warrant article to help support the town achieve the goals of the Climate Action Plan. Each little step is going to help us get there by 2050 or sooner. So
Okay.
glad to see
Sooner
this.
we hope, right?
Say it again?
Sooner we hope.
Yep, we hope sooner rather than later.
So, there's still some movement potentially in the language. Do we want to wait to see what advisory does, or do we want to lead?
I say we lead, let's go.
Excellent.
Okay. So let's lead.
So I thought I heard Melissa say that the moderator had said there may need to be some cleanup done.
The moderator
No,
hasn't.
He didn't.
He basically said, it's pretty obvious that there are multiple authors. I would imagine that the advisory committee may tighten this up, but I don't know for sure.
He signed off on the substantive changes.
There will be more changes, I'm sure.
Well, if worse comes to worse, we can always reconsider.
Sure.
We can put our marker down.
So what is this version called that we're voting on then?
I would just say it's the climate action
Okay.
recommendation.
Yep.
Yeah, how's that?
Okay.
Staff Vision 2.0.
So it will, we change the wording voted that the town will adopt, and we remove at the end, or act anything therefore, anything relative thereto. So I will move the Climate Action Committee language. All those in favor, please say aye. Select Person Franco.
Aye.
Select Person Heller.
Aye.
Select Person Green.
Aye.
Select Person Hamilton. No, why?
Okay, aye.
And chair votes aye. Okay.
Excellent.
So Article 16, the petitioner is now here.
Okay.
So you have the subcommittee, the Planning and Regulation Subcommittee report.
So what happened, Mr. Dempsey, downstairs?
Sunset clause.
We had a favorable motion on the language that's before you, which is the subcommittee language. I'll just start. Chris Dempsey, town meeting member, precinct 6, chair of the Transportation Board, not speaking on behalf of the Transportation Board tonight. So there was a vote that was 13 to 10 to 0 to support the subcommittee language after much debate around a potential sunset clause and some other questions. That's where we ended up. If I have my parliamentary procedure correctly, if the select board were to also support that language, then that would be a consensus motion from the petitioner, from
Right.
the AC, and from the select board. I'm certainly supportive of what I call the subcommittee language, because I do think it made some improvements. I'm happy to talk about what those improvements are, but I think it's been well shaped by that subcommittee conversation.
Yeah, so why don't you talk a little about the substance of what happened?
Sure. So this does a couple things. This sort of new or subcommittee motion. It sets some terms on the Parking Benefit District Advisory Board, which I think makes a lot of sense, and it describes how a vacancy would be filled if a member leaves in their term. It also clarifies how the incremental funding would work, and it clarifies that the funding would be put into a special revenue fund. So I think that is a kind of important logistical question. And then I think from a substantive perspective, the most important change is that it has slightly narrowed the geography of the district in two ways. The first way is that it has removed the town hall lot from the district, which is something that this board raised as a question last time. And I think there's just a general consensus that because many of the people parking in that lot are there for town business and not village business, that it's appropriate to remove that lot. The second place where it narrows the geography is down Brookline Avenue to a set of meters that are on the northeastern side of Brookline Avenue, north of Aspinwall Avenue. And the sense of the subcommittee was that those are really spots that are used more as sort of Longwood medical area spots and less as village spots. And that was a sort of compromise that we came to come to consensus, and one that I'm comfortable with.
Okay, another change is kind of adding language stating the intent that this would be revenue in excess of the townwide, which was your intent to begin with, but this is making that clear. My one kind of technical thing that I had, but I'm not going to press it, is it called for a 9-person committee, which getting 9 people is tough. So if I had my druthers, it'd be maybe a 5 or a 7-person committee, a little more manageable. But that can always be changed later if it turns out to be unmanageable. So I'm willing to go with it.
I'm willing to go with it too, but I just would like to ask why the parking meters in front of the library were included. And those are really for library patrons, or used for library patrons.
Yeah, so the subcommittee had some discussion on that very point, and there were 3 members discussing this warrant article. 2 of them supported keeping those meters in. 1 of them wanted them to be removed. I certainly don't speak for the 2 that voted to keep them in, but I know one of the sentiments that was expressed is that, yes, many people parking there are parking for the library, but they're also parking for the courts, and they're parking for the CVS and Village Fair Pizza and sort of other businesses in that area, and so that they were appropriate to leave in.
The same could be said of the town lot, though. I mean, I'm not going to make an issue of that, but
yeah, it's a little bit of a gray area. That's right.
So I just want to make clear, because somebody asked me about this, and this is what I said to this person was that my understanding is that if the town is charging $1.25 for parking per hour or whatever it is, this would charge another 25 cents, and the revenues would be separated. The $1.25 would go to the town, and the 25 cents to this. Then, if we raise the parking rate to $1.50, then and my understanding is that the rate in this area would be $1.75.
So that would be. That would depend on the recommendation that this advisory board makes to you. So they could decide that $1.50 per hour is all they're comfortable with, and they don't want to go a penny higher. And so that as you raise rates to a town level of $1.50, then they get no incremental revenue, and then their sort of stream of funds is cut off. Or they may decide, we're actually comfortable going to $1.75 per hour, and so we're going to keep that incremental in place.
All right, as long as they're not under no illusion that, we're going to go to $1.50, we want it to be town-wide. We don't want to discriminate, if you will, among neighborhoods. Some pay less and some pay more. That
Correct.
doesn't seem fair to me. So as long as they're comfortable and they understand that would be the case, if we go to $1.50, this would go to $1.50, and then there would be another 25 cents if they decided that was smart.
So that, I think it's fair to say that that's been made very clear to
Okay,
the
all right.
supporters in the village, and it would also be something for this board to reiterate as you're appointing people to this advisory board, to be very clear that that's your expectation. I don't think that will surprise anyone that's been part of this process.
So my understanding was that once the committee proposes a rate, that this board approves the rate. So if we raise it to $1.50, do we get a second chance to approve that 25% incremental amount?
Well,
Okay, so we could raise it to $1.50 and say, even if the committee wants it to go to $1.75, we could bring it down to $1.50.
So, correct. So
Okay.
this board retains all power to set rates as it has today. It's purely an advisory board, and so that would be a decision that this board would make at that time. And of course, you can accept or disregard the advice of this advisory board at your will.
Or at your peril.
I'd like to ask a question of, I think Melissa will know the answer. And that is, as I understand it currently, parking fees or general revenue go into the town coffers according to the town-school partnership, are split between the town and the schools. Is that correct?
So parking meter revenue is a local receipt, and all local receipts are split 50/50.
Okay.
The parking meter fund is different. Parking meter fund requires a transfer, and that transfer has to be for parking-related purposes. We converted the parking meter fund to a local receipt after Municipal Modernization Act. So we are essentially creating another parking meter fund. This parking meter fund is specific to
You mean of the 25 cents?
the incremental increase, yes.
Yeah. So it won't be subject?
It'll be outside of the local receipt process,
Okay.
yes.
I just want to make sure that I'm giving, when people ask me, I'm giving the correct
Yep.
answer. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll move the subcommittee language, or actually, it's now the advisory committee language. All those in favor, please say aye. Selectperson Franco?
Aye.
Selectperson Heller?
Aye.
Selectperson Green? Aye. Selectperson Hamilton?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you.
Very much. Thanks for your patience in waiting for me. Wow.
Okay, sure, no problem. We had noticed a public hearing on Article 27, and the petitioner was here, and then the petitioner left. What I think I'd like to do is just open the public hearing and then close it, and then we will put it on next week's agenda as further review and
You mean
possible
Article,
vote.
do you mean Article
Art-
28?
27.
The apology, yeah.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay.
So I'm going to open the public hearing, and if there's anyone who wishes to speak, now's your time. I see none. And
Were you here for the pool?
well, we did that already.
Oh, you did it already?
Yeah.
You can go.
Or speak to this article.
Yeah, you can speak to this article. Okay, so I'll close the public hearing, and we'll put it on as further review and possible vote next week, and we can have a discussion. Okay. Oh, well, there is one, oh, we have,
Oh, yes, the surveillance committee.
So, Mr. Chair and members of the board, we have potential prospective applicants for the Surveillance Technology and Military Type Equipment Study Committee. It's a mouthful. So there are 4 applicants I'm going to raise for your attention this evening. So when you hear each name, if you would vote aye if you're supportive of them. Scott Ananian.
Aye.
Susan Howards.
Aye.
Igor Muraviev.
Aye.
Casey Hatchett.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our business for tonight.